and welcome to another episode of That's Absurd. Please Elaborate, the science comedy podcast where we take the most weird, wild, wonderful questions from you, our listeners, or perhaps each other, and try our very best to find the actual scientifically backed answers behind them. I am 1/3 today of the stable three-legged stool that is the hosting triumvirate we have gathered. I'm Julian Huguet.
Wow.
Triumvirate. I don't get to say triumvirate enough.
I am
tripod.
I am one of the other legs, but hopefully not the one in the middle. I don't know. There are legs. Which leg do you not want to be? And anyway, I'm Trace Dominguez, the other science communicator, and we have a guest this week as well. The third leg of our triumvirate seating apparatus, Ellen Weatherford. Hello, Ellen.
No, see, the thing I said was tripod, and that's because it's a podcast.
A tripodcast.
A tripodcast.
It's a three-footed cast. Well, this would be your third podcast that you're probably releasing. Ellen Weatherford, host of two other podcasts, Just the Zoo of Us, parentheses family friendly, and Spellbound and Gagged, parentheses not family friendly. And now you're our guest here today on That's Absurd. Please elaborate. Thank you for joining us, Ellen.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to communicate some science with you guys.
As we are.
If this is your first time listening to our show, we answer these questions that we get from you, the listener, and our podcast patrons have now started to be able to vote on which questions we pick, although that has not yet affected our episodes. We're very excited that we do have some patrons, so if you want to join, you can. There's, a little link down in the show notes.
It will affect our content in the near future, and right now our Patreon is still very small since we just launched it, so they will have a disproportionate effect. The lesson is get out and vote.
Get out
on
and
our
vote.
Patreon.
On our Patreon. And
your vote counts more now.
What like a small handful of listeners want to listen to, unless you're totally cool with them being in charge of the direction of the show. You should go join our Patreon.
If you're like into U.S. politics right now, we're Vermont, but we'd love to be California.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so if you would like an absurd question answered, please submit it to us in the show notes. You can call us, email us, you can send it to us any number of different ways, and maybe it will end up on a future episode. But this week, we've got a question from Ellen and two questions from listeners. I'm going to go first.
I'm excited.
I'm very excited about this one.
I'm excited. We had to kind of fight over this question, and I'm a little bummed that you got it, but I'm looking forward to the ride. Go on, Trace. What's the question?
There was a full-on arena gladiator sort of.
It was. Boss
very
music
Olympian.
Started playing out of nowhere.
Oh no, PvP active. You cannot fast travel when there are enemies nearby.
Oh no! I hate that little blurb.
You gamers are so silly.
Nerds all around.
Ellen, do you remember your question? Should I read it back to you, or do you? She's like, I'm ready.
I never stopped thinking about it. I've thought about it every day since. Trace, how would one taxonomically classify a dragon? I'm not talking bearded dragons, Komodo dragons. That's already covered territory.
Yeah.
I'm talking wings, breathing fire, straight out of fantasy dragon. Where is this falling on the animal kingdom family tree?
I love how surprisingly relevant this was, because just after you asked it, did you see that George R.R. Martin got really upset over this exact thing?
Really?
Did you see? Yes.
No.
So you know how there's the new House of Dragons season that's come out, right?
I'm aware.
I'm like most of it.
And
through it.
They have the Targaryens, right? And they have their crest. And the dragon on the crest had 4 legs and wings. And George R.R. Martin, instead of finishing the friggin' books that he's been working on forever, decided to get all upset about this instead and went into the taxonomy of fantasy dragons and winged, scaly, fire-breathing reptiles and was very upset that the crest of the Targaryens was not accurate dragons.
I also have strong feelings about dragons that are depicted with both 4 legs and wings.
Yes.
This is egregious to me, abhorrent.
let's not steal your thunder, Trace.
No.
Trace, where do we start?
Yeah, George R.R. Martin, get back to work.
I know you're listening, George.
I don't want to hear anything from you until you're done. The next words out of your mouth better be, I finished the books.
Not a tweep, not a peep, nothing.
Yeah, I agree.
Get back in your writing hole.
Get back in your writing hole, George. I'm a best-selling author. Sure, get in there.
Okay, continue.
I love that you guys brought up the hexapodal dragon right out of the gate, or really the creators of House of the Dragon, and then also us brought it up. I completely eliminated that from the research. When I first started doing it, I was like, oh, well, there's two different kinds of dragons. There's these four-legged with the wings, and then there's the, four-limbed where the front limbs are also wings. And I completely eliminated the six-legged dragon, because that's really what it is. If you think about it, it's got 6 limbs. There's no reptile, there's no mammal, there's no animal that we know. That would be not just fantasy. You're talking like away from any kind of reality fantasy.
Yeah.
There aren't any 6-limbed vertebrates that would, and it is 2 other limbs that would power those wings versus the like 4 limbs that it walks on. So I just eliminated that entirely.
Right. It would have branched off from like us, tetrapods, right? And
which it's in the name, 4 legs.
4 legs, right?
Yeah.
These dragons would be hexapods, right?
Right, yes.
You know what's funny is my wife has gotten really into Pokemon again recently, somehow, and she's looking at everything through this lens. And I want to say, first of all, something that drives me insane about Pokemon in general is their use of the word evolution.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so wrong. Yeah. And I think it's mischaracterized it for literally millions of people, right? Yeah. Because you can have the same little Charmander, right? And when it metamorphoses into something else, it's like, oh, it's evolving. And you're like, no, it's not. No, that's not what that is.
They clearly meant like metamorphosis, but that was too many syllables.
Generations, yeah. But no, it's not evolution. It's one generation that's changing here, right? And then I was thinking about it because did you remember your starting Pokemon, everybody? Do we all have one, a preference?
Which one? I've played every generation.
In the first generation you played?
Okay, it was Gen 2, and I picked Cyndaquil.
Oh, okay. He's
a cute little guy.
Wow, Trace, are you out of this cultural loop?
0.
Are you? Wow.
The closest I got to Pokemon is a friend bought me a stuffed Psyduck that I kept in my car because I thought he was funny.
Well, that's your starter then.
But I've never actually played the game. I've touched the cards because my brothers, I cleaned up after them sometimes, but I've never played it.
I'm so sorry.
Just little Cinderella Trace cleaning up after all the other kids got to have their fun.
What is a
Get back in your cleaning hole. Well, I was Gen 1, and I picked the little fire lizard, Charmander, right?
Sure.
And then it becomes Charmeleon, which annoys me because it's going from like a reptile to an amphibian, right? Based on the name. And then the last form is a 6-limbed dragon, although if you're a real Pokemon geek, not technically a dragon. But anyway, not a dragon type.
But a palm tree is, okay, sure.
And I'm like, if you think about it, right, if this single organism that had 4 limbs suddenly turns into a 2 feet, 2 hands, and 2-winged dragon, it must have like sprouted bones out of its back.
Complete musculature would have to change. Yeah.
Just growing these giant extra limbs coming out of it. And
then that makes you wonder, like, which ones are like the basal trait? Were the arms the ones that stayed, and were the wings the new limb? Or like were the wings the ancestral limb and they had to like sprout arms?
All good questions. To me, I just understand why Charizard Ash could never control him, because he was pissed about how much his body hurt and was changing based on this forced quote unquote evolution. Okay, rant over.
I'm an abomination.
Wow. You guys have some feelings about this? I have feelings strongly about, do you remember the documentary Avatar, where they go to another planet and there's blue people and there's all these animals and they get to like USB to the animals and stuff?
Right.
Yeah. The thing that bothered me wasn't the USB thing, which in itself is weird because who's in control here, and this is a little, ethically dubious. But the fact that every one of those animals was fairly consistent with the way that it inhaled the atmosphere. through its collarbone. They almost all breathe through the collarbone. And many of them are not tetrapod. Many of them have 6 legs or more, except the primary species on the planet, which breathes through its face, does not have breathing through its collarbone like everything else, and only has 4 limbs. What?
It's almost like they artificially made them quasi-human-like, so you could relate to them more.
Right.
And canonically had boobs because it was sexier.
Yeah.
What's true?
They were like, hey, James, why do they have boobs? And he's like, I like them. And they were like, all right, asked and answered, my guy.
All right. Nope.
Sure. Cool. All right. Well, sometimes it's not about, let's not get into it. So let's get into the actual question that we came to answer here. How would you taxonomically classify a dragon? And for people that may not be aware, taxonomy is the classification of living things. It's got a couple of different purposes in science. One is literally just to make groups of things, and it helps you learn not just about the thing you're looking at, but other things that are similar to it. But also just because there's a lot of stuff in the world and in the universe, and we got to kind of keep it in a little order here. And it dates back to Plato and Aristotle and ancient Greece. And Aristotle was actually really one of the first proponents or like creators of a taxonomical system. He identified 500 different animals and put them into a hierarchy, which he called the Great Chain of Being. And man was right in the middle of this. If you think of it like a ladder, we were right in the middle. And
what?
At the top was God, and then angels, and then like demons, because he had, meta physical beings and like imaginary beings in there. And then animals were all below us. So it was like animals, and then plants, and then minerals for some reason. But
okay.
Anyways, very influential.
Sure.
He came up with the binomial names that we still use today, although they've been modified since, and I'll come right back to that in a minute. But taxonomy is not the same kind of science as a lot of other sciences, right? There's a lot more of the like debate part of science in this. Like, where do you draw the line between one species and another, especially with genetic data, which let's just set that off to the side as well and come back to it. And so I did a journalism.
Yay!
It's very exciting when we have any semblance of like journalism or like effort on this show.
Yeah.
It's very, it's an unusual step for us.
I emailed many people, but I actually got a real interview and called Greg Watkins, the senior collections manager of vertebrate zoology, herpetology, and ichthyology at the Yale Peabody Museum in New Haven, Connecticut. And
This is embarrassing.
Question. Was your email title like question about dragons, or like how did you get him to respond?
I said, science communicator wants to know about dragons. And
there's no way that passed those email filters.
Yeah, right.
No way.
Totally responded. And he said he has a book of like where fantasy creatures may have evolved from and stuff. And we ended up talking about the Cyclops, which is a pretty famous example.
You found the guy. You found the person for exactly this question.
I found the guy. He said, the Cyclops, there is a pygmy elephant that was off the coast of Greece and Italy. And when sailors got there, they saw their skull. And if you know anything about elephant skulls, it's got a big hole in the middle of it where the trunk goes. And so they're like, there's some giant monster here with one big eye. I don't know why they're
right in the middle of it.
Right in the middle of his face. What the heck is going on over here?
What else could go in a giant face hole than a big eye?
All people from the past talk like Batman villains. It's the Bat! Like Batman
like
street thugs in Arkham City that you're about to pummel the piss out of.
Yo, you see that giant Cyclops over there?
There's a one-eyed monster here.
This is going to completely change the way I've been reading Song of Achilles. My experience I'm like halfway through the book, and my experience for the rest, because the rest of this is all like Battle of Troy. So
yeah, I was going to say.
This is about to be really fun.
Hey, that Helen, she is a looker, you know what I'm saying?
Boy, that Achilles, huh?
I'd launch 1,000 ships for that face.
I think they might say
What's
mug.
the deal with Achilles?
Huh?
Hey!
This guy all tough. You touch his ankle one time, boom, crumbles to dust.
Forget about it.
Forget it.
Oh my God. So I called Greg Watkins, and he was telling me that they follow the code. Let's go to the clip.
There's a code that we follow. the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature, and we follow the code. And among the things the code requires is there be something vouchered in a permanent public collection. It can't be a photograph on someone's shaky iPhone or old Super 8 film of Bigfoot walking through Seattle. It has to be an actual thing in a real place, so that 100 years from now, a scientist can come back and look at what you looked at, and that's the repeatability of science. That's an important part of what we do.
Okay.
I love we follow the code. He's a Mandalorian.
Yeah, very much so.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Shaky iPhone photo of Bigfoot? This is not the way.
This is not the way.
Not the way. So if we were going to taxonomically classify a dragon, first we have to find one, right? And then we'd probably have to, and he went on to say that you could get a really high fidelity picture, some audio, and a bunch of other things, and then they might be able to create a holotype from that. But generally speaking, they would want one, and they would want to be able to look at it and study it so that they could do what taxonomy requires. And taxonomy is a science that includes identification, nomenclature, and classification of biological objects. And the order of that does matter. So it's characterization, identification, then nomenclature, so you name it, and then you would classify it within the tree of life. Historically, we would do this by literally just going around and like looking at stuff, right? Like, oh, that bird looks like this, and here's the coloring, and here's the spots, and, you know, whatever. And Aristotle, as I mentioned, was doing this, and he came up with this idea of animals with blood and animals without blood. And that was his first differentiator. So he started looking at animals, and he's like, well, this animal in the sea, this jellyfish, doesn't have blood. And this animal on land, it has blood. Basically, he came up with the idea of vertebrate and invertebrate, but he used blood as his example instead, which, you know, is what it is, but kind of interesting. And then eventually his protege, Theophrastus, continued doing what he was doing with animals, but with plants. However, after Aristotle and Theophrastus, there really wasn't anybody doing this for a long time until like the 16th and 17th centuries during the Age of Exploration. So we're talking like Aristotle and then nothing. And then,
well, like
they were like, we did it.
Nobody cared.
It's good.
They had better things to do. They're like blood versus no blood. I've heard all I need to know.
There wasn't anybody making a whole list of everything, right? Maybe within their regions or within their countries or within their like local areas, but not like, let's classify everything. And then comes the Swedish naturalist Carolus Linnaeus. We still use the Linnaean system today with many caveats and different changes, but he continued the use of these binomial Latin names. And because a lot of people had just been naming things, things did get named twice. And so I asked Greg about that.
Back in Darwin's day, a lot of things got named multiple times because they didn't know that the people in Denmark had them too. So you have to make sure you really have the only one or something that looks different. Genetics, you have to have DNA nowadays because why not? The technology's there and it's not that complicated. And to publish it, you'd have to put it, like I said, in an actual museum and give it a catalog number. They'll be cited. This is that specimen forever. And then the reviewers review it for the publication. And if they agree with your assessment that it's new, it's new.
So that's it. Which is why I said that it's not a science in the same way as like, we're finding the Higgs boson. And it's like, okay, well, we can do this exact same experiment 1,000 times. There might just be one animal that we've found. There might only be one. And so we all have to agree that this one is its own species. And then we get its DNA and it's like, oh, this raccoon is really similar to this red panda in look, but has no genetic similarity at all. And so we start differentiating in different ways. And as things come up, a new study is able to be invented, you know, just like in any other science, we end up finding new ways to classify and taxonomize things. Here are a couple of examples of things that we named twice. The Rosa sylvestris albacum rubore folio glabro is a pinkish-white woodland rose with hairless leaves. Then there's also the Rosa sylvestris indora sucanina, which is an odorless woodland dog rose. They are the same plant, exactly the same. And we just named it twice because two different scientists found it. And we're like, I'm the first one! I found it first time!
This must have been so much harder before the internet, right? And databases that were easily searchable.
It's also interesting to me that they both picked different qualities of the same plant as like the identifying characteristic. Like both of them found different things about them to be like what they consider to be the thing. So identifying about it, they put it in the name.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like Aristotle said, blood or no blood. But if you start looking at all of the different types of life on the planet, you can't just go blood or no blood, right? That's why we do vertebrate and invertebrate as a big differentiator. But the thing is, it's all made up. We're making this up. This is a system that we've invented. And so I find that really interesting. So Carolus Linnaeus comes up with this system. And again, this is where we get like the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. He comes up with this kind of way of organizing things. And we end up using just that binomial name to describe anybody. So Homo sapien is a specific genus or genera and then a specific species. Do you guys have any favorite scientific names for anything? Because I've got a couple. But...
Boy, do I. I've got a few.
I mean,
I knew you
personally, first place I go to is the gorilla scientific name, which is gorilla,
That's
right?
A good one.
Because
that's a good one.
They thought at first that gorillas were like in a genus all their own, right? Because genera, like the animals in a genera have the most recent common ancestor, right?
Right.
So that's the kind of umbrella they all fit under. And they thought, well, the only one in this genus is this one gorilla we found. And then they found another gorilla, and they're like, what do we name it? So they named it Gorilla.
Yeah.
The Western Lowland gorillas.
Every time they were like, this has got to be the only one, right?
Every time. And then you just keep adding more gorillas.
That's a good
Heaven
one.
help us if we find more, right? So that's the first place my mind goes. Ellen, though, I'm very
Ellen,
curious.
I feel like could have an entire episode just about fun scientific names.
I have one favorite that really stands out.
Uh-huh.
Please.
Hot Wheels Sisyphus.
That was my nickname in high school.
Tell me everything. What is this?
It's a spider.
And is it multicolored? Is it die cast?
It's named after, this is like off the hip because I didn't think I was going to be talking about Hot Wheels Sisyphus.
For sure.
But like there's like a tract in its reproductive system that is loop shaped, and the taxonomists classifying it thought it looked like a Hot Wheels track.
Oh
my God.
My word.
I
So
love
they named
it so much.
The genus is Hot Wheels, and then I want to say that the
Amazing.
Sisyphus part of the name was because like maybe it's like a different part of its anatomy was like shaped like a ball, and it looked like the ball, and they were like Sisyphus rolls a ball up a hill, and that gave us Hot Wheels Sisyphus, which there's nothing. It does not get better than that.
So I mean, I don't know. This one's pretty good. There's a trilobite fossil found in northern China, and its genus is Han. China makes sense. The species is Solo.
Excellent. Yeah. Where else are you going to go with that?
Oh,
I mean, that's pretty good. Also, I went to a Reddit thread about this, and one of the top ones was the American robin. Do you know the American robin's scientific
Turdus
name?
migratorius. Yeah, I sure do.
Exactly. Yeah, it came up to the very top. That one came up there. And I did ask Greg about naming things like after stuff like Hot Wheels, or like there's a scientific name of Dracorex hogwartsia. Which, if you read Harry Potter, you know what that is. And Greg said, yeah, it's discouraged to name things. Both actually now, these days, it's become less kind of cool to name things after yourself, which a lot of people did, or after people you dislike. And his example was sometimes you name a parasite after a scientist you don't like, which is
incredible.
Just the best.
No, bring that back. Bring that back.
So
actually, we need to be doing that more, I think.
It's really good. It's really, this one has a long and storied tradition in science because Linnaeus himself was being criticized by a botanist named Johann Siegsbeck. He complained about him publicly, so Linnaeus named a, quote, useless European weed, Siegsbeckia.
So this is tradition.
I feel like at a certain point, they're like actively searching for a new species that they hate. Like they're that petty. It's not like they stumbled on it. They're like, ooh, you know what? I've had it. I'm going to a field somewhere.
They're out in the field digging through rotting animal carcasses from maggots.
I'll show him.
That's great. That's great.
Alternatively, so my wife interned at the Natural History Museum in LA for a little while, and she interned for a malacologist, which is like people who study slugs and mollusks and stuff. And it's a very small community of malacologists. So she went to like a convention or like a gathering for the Western Society of Malacologists, and there were like 10 people there, you know? and one of the guys who works at the Natural History Museum, who's a malacologist, like studies and finds ancient fossils of mollusks. And because he's one of the few people doing this, he just has like dozens that he's named or named after himself in some way, or people that he knows. And it's like, wow, if you want to like have a whole bunch of stuff, you have to get into like a really niche field, and then you can just name everything whatever. Like,
I'm sorry. I still can't get past that being like, hello, everybody. Welcome to the 12th meeting of the National Association of Molluscologists. It's lovely to see all of North America represented here today. All 8 of you.
It's a real small, and they're all cartoon characters, I swear. They're all
like,
so
hello again,
interesting
Bill.
and strange.
I love it. Yeah. Bill, Jenny, Phil.
The gang's all here.
Yeah.
Bill W.
And they do presentations on like slug representation in pop culture that annoys them because they always put the eyes in the wrong place, like instead of on top of the eye stalks, right?
I love that.
Like my former school, UC Santa Cruz, the slug's eyes are in the wrong place, and they're very upset about this.
Oh, so good.
Avengers assemble.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Jeez, that's great. All right, so Linnaeus made a list of 12,000 different species of plant and animal. He published revisions of this list, and the 10th revision was in 1758. And at that point, we just all kept using that system. And so we still use that today. Obviously, there's still problems, and you get things like scientists classify things based on how they look or people they know or whatever it is, because maybe this one scientist discovers a lot of biodiversity. So in the 19th century, Darwin discovered evolution and started describing it, and that caused all sorts of problems because it turned out that a red butterfly and a white butterfly might be the same species, but we never thought about it before, so now we had to go back and rename things again. And then DNA does that even more, so let's take that back and say, like, now imagine you have all these species and you're like, wait a minute, where do we draw the line between this amount of genetic diversity being a species and this amount not being a species? Like, where do you go? How far do they have to be apart from each other? Because we are all quite similar genetically. So anyway, let's get back to dragons.
Yeah.
Dragons are made up. So some of this...
What?
You're telling me now for the first time.
Yeah, I'm
This is
sorry.
really upsetting news.
Sorry to say that, everyone. Should have done a trigger warning there, but
yeah.
They're made up. So because they're made up, we're not going to have a species. We're not going to have, specific things. So some of this I, also made up. I'm not the first person to do this. There are lots of different nerds who have done this over the years. But I did use some of their information and kind of compile things together based on logic, and then emailed another scientist at the Natural History Museum of London who got back to me, and I specifically asked him about dragon anatomy. Figuring
they all started like emailing each other, like, look out for this guy.
Is this weirdo bothering you too? Like,
he's emailed so many people.
This guy again.
Ugh, this little podcast is so annoying. So the guy who emailed me back is Dr. Paul Barrett. He's a merit researcher at the Natural History Museum of London. He's an expert in evolutionary paleobiology of dinosaurs and other extinct ammonites. So I thought he would be really good to weigh in on something like this, because if you were to just look at species that have been on the planet, dragons do kind of seem like dinosaurish to me.
I think there's a lot of like hypothesis that early people found dinosaur fossils, like didn't understand that things used to exist that don't exist anymore, and they just assumed this must be a dragon.
Yeah.
I think about that all the time. Or like when people who live in mountainous areas find like seashell fossils from when it used to be under the ocean and go like, there must have been a flood or something. I don't know how much myth originated from like trying to explain things in their environment that they just had no concept for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Greg actually brought that up in our conversation as well. He's like, commonly, a lot of these things, if you don't have a holotype and you just have some small pieces or whatever, which, a lot of, for example, ancient human, we know a lot about from very small pieces of bone, and we're able to kind of piece, no pun intended, piece things together that way. But if you're an ancient person and you just see a giant femur sticking out of the ground somewhere, you probably don't think, oh, that's just a giant land animal that used to live here. And instead, like the Cyclops skull, you try and put it into whatever you think it is. And, Greg said he thinks a lot about this and what people actually saw when they wrote "Here be monsters" on a map, for example. What did they see that made them be like, that is a monster and we need to not go there? Because it was just some animal that probably still swims around out there today. So Dr. Barrett says that if we were to be able to capture a dragon, see one in real life, the first thing we'd want to do is take DNA samples. If it were dead, then we would want to pickle it in a spirit to preserve its organs. The skin, the soft parts. If you've ever been to a museum, they do have lots and lots of jars with lots of different organs in them. And if they could, they would remove and clean the skeleton and then maybe stuff the skin as a taxidermy specimen. Paul was like all in on taking care of this dragon and putting it in the, the main hall or whatever museum.
I've been to a biodiversity museum that was one of these like taxonomy museums that
cool.
It's in Vancouver in British Columbia at the University of British Columbia. It's called the Biodiversity Museum. But when you go in, first of all, blue whale skeleton hanging from the ceiling. That's a flex right there. But then, the whole museum, it's set up more like a library than it doesn't have dioramas and exhibits and stuff like that. It's rows and rows of cabinets and shelves, and you just walk down the rows and look at all the preserved specimens that are either taxidermy or wet specimens in jars. Actually, while we were walking through, we could see researchers with little rolling carts walking down the aisles, getting specimens out for their research that they were doing. So we got to see them unlock some of the little drawers, and we got to see things that are normally locked away because they just happen to be getting them out for research. It's really cool. It sounds a little morbid to be pickle it and put it in a jar, but it's actually so cool.
It is really, really cool.
Sounds like a great date idea, if you ask me.
I was there with my husband. It was actually very romantic.
There you go.
That's so cute. Yes, life is fleeting, and it's a little morbid to be here, but at least we're here together. Wow. That reminds me of the California Academy of Sciences. They have a huge wall in their main room, right? That's just sea lion skulls, and it's hundreds of them, hundreds and hundreds. They're just all lined up, and it's they all look the same, but they're all a little different. And I've done a couple of videos over the years, one about taxidermy specifically, and how long some of those animals existed in those exhibits that you go see. So I went to the Natural History Museum of LA, and the lions that are in their Africa wing have been there for 100 years. That's a 100-year-old pelt, and it's covered in arsenic. So that's one of the reasons they handle it with gloves, to keep the bugs off of it. But also, if you touched it, it would be bad for you. So scientists really want to be able to maintain these things for as long as possible. They had at the Natural History Museum of LA, they had drawers like that, and you open them and it's just the same animal, over and over and over again, hundreds and hundreds of ground squirrels or red-tailed hawks or whatever that are these different species, so that scientists can come look at them and say oh, these are all examples of this. And if we find a new one that's a little different, we can compare it to all the ones that we have. So with a dragon, we wouldn't be able to do that because we probably wouldn't have hundreds and hundreds of them unless we were a Targaryen. And so both Greg and Dr. Barrett mentioned CT scanning. So we'd probably digitally image as best as we could. We'd CT scan, we'd take photos, we'd preserve the skin in some way. Dr. Barrett said if we didn't pickle it, if we didn't take all the pieces and try and cut it into pieces to understand them, we would probably prefer to keep the body intact if it was the only specimen we had. And we would use those imaging techniques to peer inside its body and try and maintain it, mummify it in some way so that we could get,
big jar.
You need a really big jar. It'd be really big. It'd be pretty cool. So the point is we document literally everything we can. Once we've documented it all, then we can start to kind of guess at all of the different, domain, kingdom, phylum, class. Obviously, domain's pretty easy. But so I did ask Greg specifically what kind of things one would pay attention to when you find a new species.
When it is something that there's nothing you can really compare to, it's harder to say. But with reptiles, almost every species description includes a lot of scale count data. How many scale rows around the body? how many scales in a row of either a standard length or from the neck to the tip of the tail, anything like that. If it can be counted, it is. Okay, face scales are wonderful for that because that you can see them pretty clearly. A classic Tolkien dragon has a great crest of scales around the back of its head that probably means something. And in general, if you can imagine that it has to do with how you move, how you find food, or how you find a mate, people will look at it to see what kind of data there may be in that, because selection would have done something on that character.
So I didn't realize that scale count was so important to the species.
Yeah, me either.
I didn't hear a word he said because I noticed he had a Pikachu magnet on his cabinet behind him.
I did clock that Pikachu.
And I was wondering how he felt about Pokemon's use of the word evolution. And it was all I could think about the whole time.
I'll give you his email. You can
yes,
reach out.
Thank you. Hey, remember that guy who asked about dragons? Anyway, I got questions about Pokemon.
Not more of you, no.
Let me throw it to you guys, right? So what kingdom do you think that a dragon would be in? I feel like we're probably all going to be on the same page here.
I don't think they're a plant or a fungus. So Animalia.
Yeah, I think we're going animal.
Yeah, it's a multicellular, eukaryotic, heterotrophic animal. The phylum would be then Chordata, which is a bilaterally symmetrical organ system, nerve cord, closed circulatory system animal. Then we get to the class. The class is where we start to get a little more fun. Probably reptilia. It depends. A lot of reptiles are cold-blooded. Not all of them, but, interesting. So subgroup under reptilia vertebrate, clearly. And this is where we get to just start making stuff up at that point. Because at that point, they probably do start to differentiate from some common ancestor, whether that's a dinosaur or something else. So, Paul, I listed a bunch of anatomical things that we quote-unquote know about dragons, using specifically Tolkien dragons, Game of Thrones dragons, and a little Harry Potter dragon for spice in there. Not Eastern dragons, because they're a completely different anatomy. It would be a completely different species, though likely related if we were to put them into this same tree of life. So I just wanted to stick to that Western fantasy dragon that you might picture. So it's got a bony skeleton. That skeleton's probably hollow because it can fly. If it can fly, it's got to have light bones. And so thus, Dr. Barrett says, having bones places them in vertebrates. Hollow bones appear a number of times in vertebrates. Specific types of bones or bone shapes would be more helpful features. He also said with breathing, they probably breathe with lungs, which is common in land-living animals, amphibians, birds, reptiles, mammals, and even some fish. Interestingly, and I want you to put a pin in this, dragons are said to have a smell. When you are around them, they tend to smell not great, like brimstone or gunpowder. This is in some of the lore about dragons, so keep that in mind. They're tetrapods. They have 4 legs, which includes all land vertebrates, although, snakes would be an exception because they do have some exceptions.
Sometimes less, never more.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, if dragons had 4 legs and 2 wings, we're not going to even go there. Interestingly, dragons lay eggs, and so, according to Dr. Barrett, this feature is widespread across birds and reptiles, so that kind of gives us more data that they're going to be in one of those groups. It doesn't narrow it down much, though, and egg color and patterning might help distinguish eggs from other reptiles and other birds. They grow very large from very small eggs, which I found really interesting, and both of them kind of keyed in on. Dr. Barrett said the large size has evolved lots of times, so it isn't a very useful feature. It also changes as the animal grows, so you need to know their adult size versus their teenage size versus their baby size, depending on what species you're looking at and what specimen you have. And they don't usually use size much to determine taxonomy.
Julian, give me your best dinosaur roar.
Oh, God, an asteroid! It's horrible!
Wow, that was not where I expected that to go. We're popping in before the show to tell you about I Know Dino. It's a dinosaur podcast.
We think of those dinosaurs being this thing that's been dead for tens of millions of years. Even so, studying dinosaurs can still teach us stuff that is relevant to the world today.
Yeah, like climate models to help us understand global warming.
Migration patterns of dinosaur lineages, they tell us about Earth's changing continents.
We can also study dinosaur diets, what plants lived then and maybe what animals and how they interact.
And this is super cool. Many dinosaur injuries, paleopathologies, they're the first known occurrences of diseases.
And they talk about all this kind of stuff on I Know Dino. It comes out every week with new dinosaur stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Like, I hadn't heard of a lot of these, which is pretty cool.
You can find I Know Dino on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are. And if you found us, you can probably find them. Go check them out.
Which I thought was kind of neat, unless those species are really related and one only grows to, human-sized and the other dragon grows to house-sized. Those might be different species. However, what Greg had to say about size was really fascinating. Let me play this clip and see if it makes sense.
Yeah, laying eggs. It's interesting in the fantasy movies where they show the dragon egg and then the adult dragon, there's a huge disparity in size. That's not that different from dinosaur egg versus adult dinosaur. So what it implies to me is they grow really fast. Or they have some social order where somebody helps protect tiny babies. Yeah, so parental care is a thing, and it's often in these things that get really big and are pretty resilient on their own as adults, but when they're little, even a blue heron could swallow you. I would think that they probably have a pretty detailed parental care based on having few but small babies that are vulnerable. Or you lay a few eggs frequently.
And I thought that was wild. Like the idea that it's like, oh, I look at a tiny egg and a big dragon, I'm like, wow, that thing grows pretty fast. Like, yeah, maybe. Or it just like grows really big. And he sees that and goes, they must have detailed parental care.
That makes a lot of sense. You see this in a lot of like really large flighted birds, like condors and stuff. They dedicate tons of like energy and resources into caring for their young, and they don't have very many at a time. But they start off, these tiny little altricial condor chicks that they, grow to these massive sizes.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're saying there's probably, if there are dragons, there's probably like a mother of dragons that really takes care of them. For
Perhaps
like
3
many
of them.
seasons.
Yeah. Multi-seasonal, good contract renewal, very solid.
Yeah.
Something else we talked about then would be vertical pupils, pretty common in dragon drawings. And Greg says this tends to be from something that's nocturnal or evolved from something that is nocturnal. So even if it is a day animal, but it has vertical slits in its pupils, its nearest ancestor was likely a nocturnal animal, which I thought kind of neat. Makes sense. Dragons living in caves and dark places. That makes total sense. Yeah. Greg also mentioned, though, but that just because they have sharp teeth, which I mentioned is like, oh, so we know they eat meat, right? He's like, no, not necessarily. Sharp teeth doesn't necessarily mean that they're carnivores. They could be omnivores. They also could just be a threat display. If you think of chimpanzees, they would eat meat if they could, but mostly they have big, sharp teeth as a threat display to show other animals to back off, which is pretty interesting. Also, if you think about dragon size, dragons are very, very large. The largest carnivore in the world. Any guess what that would be? I did land animal. Sorry, that might be more specific.
Polar bear.
Yeah, the polar bear.
There are much larger herbivores. I mean, yeah, by its nature, right? Or just things that eat things at like lower trophic levels.
I'd say like on average, an herbivore tends to be larger than a carnivore.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Like gorillas, right?
Mm-hmm. Quite large.
Pure herbivores.
And which species is that?
The gorilla.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect. Yes,
Great.
But not the
helps.
gorilla.
We need to rein it back a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
I also looked up the largest omnivore. Any guesses what the largest, on land, the largest omnivore might be? I'll give you a hint. Also a bear.
Grizzly bear?
Also
grizzly
a bear. Don't say panda bear, because they're not bears.
No.
Okay.
Kodiak bear. That's a Kodiak.
Oh.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the largest overall on the planet is the whale shark, the largest omnivore. And so they can grow quite large. And so perhaps the teeth are more used for intimidation. And then there are some times that you see them grab prey with teeth that they then use their flames and fire breathing to cook. So perhaps they do that. And thus they would have to eat less of that, because the reason we cook meat is to get more nutrients out of it without having to spend too much energy digesting it. So perhaps they do the same thing, which would fit with being highly intelligent and also having those sharp teeth that they can use to hold. There are some undersea fish that do that, where they'll hold on to their prey and then, consume it other ways.
I was thinking the long sort of needly teeth, that's deep sea right there. Like all those deep sea weirdos have the really long needly teeth.
Yeah, because if you find something in the deep sea, you better be able to hang on to it.
That's right.
Know?
Yeah,
like the odds of finding another thing again are slim. So you got to make the most of every chance you can to just.
We're friends now.
Screw that thing.
Please don't leave me. So if you were to meet a dragon in the wild, it's probably related to some nocturnal flying species. A lot of people point to the Quetzalcoatlus, which is a giraffe-sized, egg-laying reptilian pterosaur, and the main drawback there is that they look like a pterosaur. They don't really look dragony. They look more like, pointy and kind of birdy.
Yeah,
and so
big, goofy, dumb birds.
Yeah, like big, dumb, silly bird things. The wing design of the pterosaur, though, does have that, kind of front limb wing attached to the body and then a hind limb. The thing is, someone went through the trouble to look at all of the different bone structures within those wings, which I really appreciated. The pterosaur has basically a really long pinky finger, and it's just like, pew, and that's where its wing attaches to.
It's very fancy. It's always got its pinky out as it flies along.
Hello there, hello. Whereas birds, like modern birds, they're kind of fused together. They don't really have fingers. All of their fingers kind of fuse together into a wing. And then bats have that like...
mega finger.
Yeah, the 5-fingered mammally wing thing.
Is like how dragon wings look. Like they have like individual fingers with the webbing in between.
Yeah, exactly. So Ellie Mayfield from the University of Montana, she was an incredible undergrad who wrote this honors thesis that talked about these bone structures. She cited something as the potential order for dragons as the Scansorioptergid, which is a small non-avian dinosaur that translates to climbing wings because it had hind limbs with an arm with fingers extending into the wing. So it's a dinosaur with finger wings. So that's pretty cool, and it used them to grasp while also flying. Sound familiar? Kind of like dragons. So if we were to go with an order of Serischia, which is the same thing as the Scansorioptergid, that would be maybe make sense. Dinosaur only really has 2 orders. There's Serischia and then Ornithischia, which is mostly the herbivore dinosaurs. And so this one would be an omnivore or carnivore dinosaur. So it totally makes sense there. And then Greg told me that you probably don't want to use Draco because at that point you're getting into the agamid lizard in Southeast Asia. So instead for the family, I started looking in a different direction. Oh, also, the Scansorioptergids likely hoarded shiny things because they're more related to birds who like to hoard shiny things.
Oh.
That's something.
That's also why I picked that as the order. But now we're into family. And with family, I just kind of made it up based on what we know about dragon anatomy, right?
Okay.
So dragons, they have these wide-ranging habitats. They come in lots of different colors. They have teeth on the outer rims of their mouths. They don't thermoregulate maybe, but maybe they do. So I came up with a family of Magneterogamidae, which is a great winged dragon lizard. The Gamidae is actually a dragon lizard that already exists. So this would just be a giant winged version of that.
On thermoregulation, you mentioned that they are likely derived from something nocturnal and they live in caves and seem to be adapted to the dark. That would imply to me that they have some degree of thermoregulation because they would otherwise need to be spending time in the sunlight. They would need to be getting that warmth from the sun. So and they breathe fire. There's literally fire like inside them.
That's what I'm wondering, right?
I'm wondering
like,
if the fire source is something that's like an internal like thermoregulation thing.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of like the waste product from biological processes like us that is heat, right? Instead, there is some chemical process that produces fire and therefore, keeps them warm.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Active.
And it could be that some dragons are more warm-blooded or have thermal regulation and others don't. Maybe some dragons do have to spend time in the sun. You know, dragons come in all these different sizes in fantasy. Some live in caves and some live in castles and some are like living on mountaintops and stuff. So here's where I split into 2 genera, Igneopteryx and Vesperopteryx, which is fire-breathing dragon and not fire-breathing dragon. The reason I use vesper is the Latin word for basically nighttime. So I thought that would be kind of fun. So, and whereas Igneopteryx is Greek for fire. So vesper, cool word, James Bond reference, tasty cocktail, evening star. Cool.
You could call them the Vespertine dragons. That would be so cool. Vespertine Dragons.
Great band name. Just gonna throw it out there.
Oh, Vespertine
It's already a
Dragons.
Bjork album, so if you don't want to get in trouble with Bjork.
Dang it.
I was thinking more really good roller derby name, Vespertine Dragon.
The Vespertine Dragons.
Yeah. So then we end up with these genera of like fire breathing and not. And then we get to the species. And the species level would just be literally something that defined it from something else. One might be regalis, which is an impressive or magnificent, so it might be just a really big one. So you could have an Igniopteryx regalis, which would be a fire-breathing, very large, impressive dragon. You could have the Vesperopteryx spinosus, which is Latin for spikes. So you have a spiky dragon that doesn't breathe fire, which makes sense. You could have the Vesperopteryx draconis, which is a medium-sized dragon, or an Igniopteryx viridis, which is a green fire-breathing dragon. You know, you could kind of break it down however you want. So
This is where
that's
it's jazz, baby.
you just kind of make it up. You could have a different genre too for different skull morphologies, because if you think about some fantasy dragons have really long kind of pointy skulls and others have kind of wide fat skulls, and it probably has something to do with what they're eating. And we would have to find a bunch of species that does that. But the thing we haven't talked about yet, fire breathing.
Yeah.
How do they do
We've
that?
alluded to it.
How
I
they
don't
do?
know.
How do they do that?
I was hoping you'd tell me.
How breathe fire they? So,
How do hot?
bombardier beetles. Have you heard of bombardier beetles?
Oh, I sure have.
Yeah, the bombardier beetle.
They're so cool.
They're super cool. Julian, you want to tell us what they do?
Yeah, so they have, and correct me if I misstep, but
No.
they have like 2 different chemicals in chambers within their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're threatened by something, they turn around and out of their butt, they combine these 2 chemicals, which react with each other in like a explosive exothermic reaction, and they spray it all over whatever is threatening them,
100% nailed it.
which might include Charles Darwin, right? Have you heard the story?
No.
Didn't he like put one in his mouth or something weird like
Yes!
that?
What?
Yes.
That's so
He
stupid.
was out there being a naturalist, looking at stuff, and they're like these really bombardier beetles. They're like orange with the green, blue, like
cool looking.
iridescent wing cover wings, whatever those are called. I always forget, but like he's like, oh, cool bug, and he holds it. And then he's like, oh, another cool bug, right? And then he finds a third cool bug.
Oh,
but he's only got the 2 hands. He's like, where can I keep the first cool bug? Put it in my mouth.
That's
The little
that's a
goblin
place?
part of his brain was whispering in
Yeah.
his ear. It was whispering in his ear like the Green Goblin. Put the bug in your mouth. Put the bug in your mouth, Charles.
So
Put it in your mouth.
I think this is inspiring, right? Because you can be brilliant and have ideas that change the world. And sometimes you can also be a complete idiot, and it's
Oh.
okay. Like, it's
Julian,
fine.
that's a really good point.
You're doing great,
Thank you for
sweetie.
bringing that up. Put the bug in your mouth.
Put bug in Darwin mouth. Put
He
bug.
didn't know what
No
it
hands
would
left.
do,
Where
right?
go? Mouth.
Only got one option.
He had no idea, though, that this thing had, like, this freaking shotgun ass and when he put it in his mouth. And I think it went off, like, in his mouth and injured him. I'll have to double check that. But
Of
yeah,
all
like,
of the creatures on this planet for him to put in his mouth,
Oh.
he picked
The
the one.
The one. I mean, yeah. Can't say the universe doesn't have a sense of
The
humor.
one with an acid cannon.
Yeah, an acid cannon.
wait, I found it. Hold on. He wrote a letter to another naturalist, Leonard Jennings, in
Like,
1846.
Leonard, you are not going to believe my
And he
day.
wrote this.
my tongue is still hurting.
Under a piece of bark, I found 2 caribi, I forget which, and caught one in each hand, when lo and behold, I saw a sacred Panagius crux major. I could not bear to give up either of my caribi, and to lose Panagius was out of the question, so that in despair I gently seized one of the caribi between my teeth, when to my unspeakable disgust and pain, the little inconsiderate beast squirted his acid down my throat.
Oh,
Roasted.
no. Wow.
Oh,
So,
man.
Wow.
If I was him, I never would have told a soul that story. That is so embarrassing. And he fully just like on
Yeah.
main was like,
That's-
you're
wow.
not going to believe my day.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Wow.
did something real stupid, Leonard. You're not gonna believe it. But I had the sacred Panagius Crux Major. I could not, but he already had 2 of the beetles, and he had to keep both of them.
He's like, Lenny, you understand, right? I could not have dropped this beetle.
Lenny gets it. Lenny's a ride or die for Dari.
Dropping the beetle out of the question.
Good old Chuck and Lenny. Man, I would watch that cartoon. Chuck and Lenny.
Oh my gosh.
So,
what a story.
The bombardier beetle uses hydrogen peroxide and hydroquinone, which is C6H4 and then a hydroxyl group. It mixes together, sprays it, and reacts, creating heat. So I spent a lot of time thinking about this because some people say that dragons breathe fire by ingesting things that allow them to create sparks, and then they produce hydrogen or methane, and they just breathe it out really strongly, and then, create a spark and does fire. But if you've ever seen those science experiments of balloons exploding or like really soft things exploding, and by exploding I mean like they light hydrogen on fire, where does it go? Does it go forward? It goes up. It's lighter than air by a lot. So when you make something like hydrogen burn, not only is it going to go up, it's going to go up quickly, and it's hot. If you sprayed hydrogen out of your mouth, just good old hydrogen, and we're going to assume it's not liquid hydrogen because that would require immense pressures and or very low temperatures. So it's just gaseous hydrogen. They're not going to be able to breathe it on anything unless that thing is above them. And so I was like, I'm not going to go with that. And instead, me and ChatGPT got together and came up with a few different combinations of chemicals. So we already know the bombardier beetle uses hydrogen peroxide, produces it naturally in its body. I looked up some other different things. For example, dimethyl sulfide, which is C2H6S. It's produced in nature by microorganisms, phytoplankton, comes from breaking down corn, cabbage, beetroot, and seafood, and it's a pretty common biological compound, the most common to contain sulfur. Now you remember, the dragon doesn't smell so good.
Would one say it smells perhaps like rotting eggs?
Yeah. Brimstone and gunpowder, which is how they are described dragons, both contain saltpeter or sulfur. So it could be that they store these two chemicals separately. When you mix hydrogen peroxide and dimethyl sulfide, you spray them into the air, they ignite and heat and flame in a, as my chem teacher would say, very energetic reaction, resulting in CO2, water, and sulfur dioxide. So you get that sulfur dioxide smell of rotten eggs as well. And they could both be liquids, so they can squirt them out of their mouths. They ignite when they mix with oxygen. It actually adds even more energetic reaction, and then, spontaneously ignites when air temperature gets hot anyway. So after a while, they don't even need to be worried about sparking it. They can just spray the dimethyl sulfide. So they could have a bigger vat of dimethyl sulfide and a small one of hydrogen peroxide, get things going, and then just keep breathing fire for a while. So that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, you mentioned that chemical is produced by microorganisms. And it would be difficult to scale that up to being produced naturally by a very large organism, but a lot of large animals have symbiotic relationships with microorganisms that live inside their body. So they could have a little organ in there that's this is my little microorganism farm.
Yeah, my little bacteria sac.
Yeah.
Yes. And that would explain also maybe what they're eating, or what they might eat something that then they have to consume, similar to a previous episode where Julian and I were talking about a roundworm that needs to consume chlorophyll or it will die. So maybe some dragons, can't breathe fire if they don't consume the correct microbacteria or something when they're quite small to populate their, fire sac microflora or whatever.
Some animals, like pandas, and I think koalas do this too. They don't produce the right gut flora and gut fauna, I guess, that they need to break down their diets. So they have to get it from their mother through her sort of
That's what I was thinking.
Astrological process. So they have to eat their mom's poop to get her gut microbes.
It's a poop transplant.
Pandas are the worst animals. I've said it forever.
And you did mention that the dragons would probably be exhibiting a lot of parental care. So mama's hanging around. So maybe she's passing some of those gut microbes.
She just squirts
to
a
her
little,
babies.
Squirts a little out of the right sac. Just give you a little of that microflora, and they just lick it right up,
I was imagining how birds feed their young, right? Just regurgitate,
Yeah, and these are very bird-like, might have some similar instincts.
Yeah, so maybe the mother is passing her fire-producing bacteria to the young.
Oh, so like when the baby's first like flame spout is like a big moment for them, you know, when they're young, like they can't do it yet, and then they build up the biome and then they like hiccup.
It's really cute.
Oh my
They
God,
sneeze and
so
fire
cute.
shoots out.
Okay, so to answer your question, Ellen, after this very long walk, domain eukaryote, kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class probably Reptilia, order Ceretia, family Magnetaro-Agamidae, and then 2 genus or genera of Igneopteryx and Vesperopteryx with various species, Regala, Spinosus, Draconis, or Viridis, or whatever.
Yay!
Yay! That was thorough.
That was
Thank
very
you.
thorough. That was amazing.
Yes,
That's exactly what I
wonderful.
wanted.
It's hot
Loved
here.
it.
And special
Loved it.
thanks very much to Greg Watkins from the Yale Peabody Museum and Dr. Paul Barrett for answering my flurry of emails.
I can't believe anybody takes us seriously
Thank you
for
so
5
much.
minutes at all. That was
Amazing.
great.
Let's take a quick break and come back with somebody else's question. I think it's going to be Ellen. All right, welcome back, everyone, to That's Absurd. Please elaborate. If you took the time to join the Patreon while we were on our break, I really appreciate it. If you haven't yet, go look in the show notes. Maybe you can. It'll be great. But in the meantime, Ellen, you had a question that you answered from a listener this week. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I'm so excited to answer it.
All right, so what's the question and who asked it?
This question is from Riley.
Hi, Trace and Julian. My name is Riley M. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona in the US. And my question is, if mermaids exist, what would they realistically look like? And I mean, if we discovered mermaids today, what would they look like? Would they be deep sea creatures? Would their lung capacity be weird? What parts have to be fish versus human to be a mermaid? I think about this a lot. I wrote about it in one of my sci-fi creative writing classes in undergrad, and now as a biology master's student, I think about it even more. I used to talk about this with my tattoo artist, and then we ended up tattooing one of our versions on me. His name is Creechy. But I would love to hear what you guys think these mermaids would look like. Thank you so much for this podcast. What a treat, what a dream to be alive at the same time as it. Have an absurd but wonderful day. Bye.
That was so
cool.
good.
That is so
Okay,
cool.
Riley, the more they talk, I was like, oh, they're cool. Oh, they're cool. Oh, they're cool.
I started getting intimidated. I was like, oh no, this person is too cool.
Oh, no.
Guys.
Oh, no.
I have
Oh,
to
no. I
bail.
hope we never meet. The illusion will be broken. Oh, wow. I was just going to start by saying I loved how much. Oh, there's a picture.
She
the hell is
sent in
that?
a picture of her tattoo. She sent in a
It
picture
is-
of her tattoo.
Perfect.
Oh my God.
It's absolute nightmare fuel, as it should be. For those listening in audio form, it is not your cute Little Mermaid Disney Ariel. No, no, no. No, it is like a deep sea creature come to land with like a humanoid face and arms, and then
And that's like
eel-like tail.
Everything else has totally lost the plot.
I love it so much. That's so great. And I love Riley can just be like, yeah, I got a mermaid tattoo. Bam.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
So when I, saw this question, I really jumped at it because it gives me an opportunity to talk about something that whenever I hear about it, I foam at the mouth. I go into a sort of fugue state and I'm like, okay, you're going to hear me talk about this for a while now. And that is the aquatic ape hypothesis.
Oh,
yes.
I have some friends that are zookeepers that get visibly upset when this
I
comes up.
go
Okay.
feral. Like a
Yeah.
beast takes over my brain and I can't control myself.
Like the first time I heard it, my process of looking into it was asking my friends who are like zoologists, like, "Hey, have you heard this?" And like I triggered something.
They probably
deep
immediately
and
combusted.
primal in them. They were
They just
so,
burst into flames on the
They were just like,
so angry. Okay,
Yes.
go on, Ellen.
Okay.
Julian, what are you thinking?
I'm taking y'all. Let's step in our time machine. Let's go back to the year 1960.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, good, not too far.
An article is published in the magazine New Scientist. And this
Oh.
article is an essay by marine biologist Alistair Hardy, which Alistair is such like a cool mid-century name.
Yeah.
Every like weird scientist from the middle of the century is all named Alistair. So Alistair Hardy is a marine biologist. He posts this essay pointing out that humans seem to have a lot of traits that we commonly see in other aquatic animals. So sort of his big ones are having very little body hair, because we've lost a lot of our body hair, which you see in other primates. Most primates still have most of their body hair. We also have very high levels of body fat right underneath our skin, which is something you see in a lot of like aquatic animals that use like blubber to warm themselves, right? That like high subcutaneous fat, something you see in a lot of aquatic animals. So his suggestion is that these adaptations could have helped early human ancestors hunt and forage in shallow coastal waters. So his suggestion is maybe our human ancestor was something that was maybe had an aquatic lifestyle that was more adapted to swimming, grabbing fish out of the water. He didn't mean fully, totally living with the whales and the dolphins. He kind of meant more just like spending a lot of time along the coasts and in the water. Now, important to note is that at the time, there were much bigger gaps in the hominid fossil record than there are now. Millions and millions and millions of years completely unaccounted for because we just hadn't found the fossils yet. Like, we just didn't know.
We hadn't found Lucy, and I know that because they named Lucy after the Beatles song, which possibly
wouldn't have come out then.
Come out in 1960. I almost made a joke about how excited I am for the Beatles to come to America now that we're back in time. Okay, fair.
Alistair Hardy wouldn't have been excited about that because that threw a whole wrench in his thing. But so at the time, there were these huge gaps in the fossil record. It was kind of anyone's guess, right? They were like, I don't know. We don't know what humans were doing for these huge stretches of time. So this guy was a marine biologist. He's kind of spitballing. He's like, well, you know, here's what I think as a marine biologist. This is the stuff that I know. So I don't know. Maybe it's this. He was kind of vibing. Like, he was just like riffing just like, off of the whole, like, I don't know. Yeah.
Where'd humans come from? I don't know. I don't know, man. Let's figure it out. You know what? It was the 60s, you guys. It was like right at the start of it. But he was sitting in some like tapestried living room.
This would have come out in 1960, so this would have been like probably developed during the late 50s. So I don't know if that was like yet in the sort of psychedelic craze, but
maybe he was he was early on in that. Maybe he was
an early adopter.
Yeah.
He kind of suggested that maybe humans lived in a marine environment, so their fossils would have been washed away. So he was kind of suggesting this as a reason that maybe we hadn't found those fossils, because like maybe they got washed out and, you know, we wouldn't find as many fossils if they were spending more time in those coastal areas. So eventually, after, you know, more science is done, more fossils are found, this gets contradicted. So actual archaeological finds filled in those gaps did not line up at all with his hypothesis. He was thinking they were more along the coast. The early human ancestors were definitely not. They were more inland, much more inland, far away from the coast. It was basically disproven. And then Hardy actually later said that after papers like all over the country started picking up his essay and reporting on it as a scientific conclusion. So they weren't reporting on it as, you know, oh, isn't this a cool idea? They were reporting it as scientist says humans evolved in the water, basically.
Oh no, bad science communication strikes again.
A bad journalism. They did a bad journalism.
No, hot. No.
Don't touch.
No touching. No touching.
And so the papers started picking up his essay and reporting on them as a conclusion. And he actually started writing letters to the papers asking them to correct their articles. He's like, please don't say this. Like, you are misrepresenting what I was, like, I was guessing. I was just having fun, basically. This was for funsies.
Just spitballing. Just
he's
out there vibing and you're like trying to take it too serious.
It's not that serious, bro. It's not that serious.
It's not that deep.
Yes, but they really ran with it. They took off. So that was 1960, and then sort of in the following, you know, decades after that. Fast forward, this thing kind of dies down. Like, it's sort of on the fringes, but not a lot of people are really talking about it. The aquatic ape hypothesis, it's dead in the water, and it kind of like dies down, and people aren't really talking about it much until fast forward to the year 2012.
Wow, do we have to time travel to that too?
Animal Planet, which I trusted you. I loved you, Animal Planet. You were my brother.
The company I worked for in 2012.
You raised me, Animal Planet. How could you do this to me?
Oh, no.
Animal Planet ran a mockumentary titled Mermaids, The Body Found. Have you heard about it?
I worked there. When
you worked there?
This was when the business of, it's important to talk about the business of television, right? Because this was when like reality TV was making good money for like return on the investment. And they were like, we're going to shift our programming to be a lot more like lowest common denominator. Like we're going to basically abandon the doing good science communication thing that this company was founded on and just go for the cheap views and, you know, more revenue that way.
Their clickbait era.
Trace and I, as people working for the digital branch of Discovery, I always viewed us as kind of like the torchbearer for how it used to be. Yeah, we still really cared about not sensationalizing things and being accurate, and were really frustrated when the television branch that has more prestige and weight and viewers went in the direction it did.
Yeah.
So yeah, really upsetting kind of era for us.
Yeah. And for me personally as a viewer, right? Because I had grown up on Animal Planet and like still had a sort of old flame in my heart for them. And I would like still turn them on sometimes to be like, maybe there's something on right now. Oh no.
Yeah.
Megalodon. What?
Oh, damn it.
The thing about those mockumentaries, too, is you wouldn't know it until the very end. There'd be like a little thing in the credits, like a small one line of text that was just like, by the way, none of this is real.
This is fiction.
Yeah.
Right.
Everyone wasn't streaming at the time. You know, people were kind of streaming, but this wasn't like, it wasn't totally there yet. People were still watching live TV. So if you just turned it on in the middle, I think I looked it up and there was a disclaimer at the very, very beginning, but like you said, literally one sentence on the screen for like a few seconds at the very beginning of the program and at the very end, but it was like in the middle of the credits in a weird way. Yeah. So if you just turned it on in the middle, you would have totally missed those disclaimers and had no idea that this was a work of fiction. Like they said it on there. They were like, this is a work of fiction. All of these people are actors. None of this is real. This is just for funsies. But if you just watched it in the middle, as most people did at the time, you would have no idea. And I specifically remember, because I was in high school at the time, I would have been a senior in high school. And I remember, because I clocked it immediately. I knew exactly what this was. I was like, this is not real. But I had so many friends on Facebook who were basically like live posting and they were like, can you believe it? This is the government's been hiding mermaids from us. And I remember being like distressed. I remember who it was. I remember who they were. The people that were like posting about the mermaids. I remember who they were. Them. I still in my brain, it's back there.
Brad, I've never looked at you the same way.
Now that I've railed about how much I hate these things, can I also share my biggest secret, shameful thing I think I've done in all the years that I've been working? And that is when I first moved to LA and I moved down here to work in film as an on-camera actor before I got into science communication. One of the first and very few things I ever booked was one of these fake documentaries. As a UFO expert.
Oh,
named
my God.
Kurt Wiggins. And we filmed it out in the desert of North Africa, which looks suspiciously like Simi Valley. And it was like, I remember, so the audition had it originally as like something involving, portals to hell and Satan and stuff. And I thought it was ridiculous. And then I actually got the part and got the script. And it was instead, like that was a cover and it was all about UFOs instead. But it was like just every single UFO conspiracy buzzword like thrown together on like UFOs and the Bermuda Triangle. And I was reading it and I'm like, this is so ridiculous. No one can take it seriously. And so like I got paid a very meager amount of money that I used to buy a bed because I didn't have a bed at the time. I was so poor. And like I still have that bed.
The bed that UFOs bought.
Yeah. And I thought it was harmless, right? And I was like, nobody's going to take this seriously. And then one day, like I come back to my apartment, I lived with 4 other dudes, and one of them had a girlfriend, and she was like, you son of a bee. I was watching this. I thought it was like legit. And then your face shows up.
So in a way, you did combat misinformation.
Yeah, for one person.
By
and
existing.
Then spread it probably a lot for all these other people. Hopefully they forgot all about
Julian.
it. Yeah.
Do you think when you first started doing science communication, there were people in the audience who was like, is that Kurt Wiggins?
Wait a minute. I think I got a couple comments, and I was like, no, Kurt Wiggins died in the deserts of North Africa, and I'm alive, so that I can't possibly be Kurt Wiggins.
Have you ever seen Julian and Kurt Wiggins in the same room at the same time?
I mean, yes, that when Julian's standing in a room, Kurt Wiggins is there.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Mermaids documentary has been a thorn in my side for years, not just because it was annoying, like it was like this whole like government conspiracy, like mermaids are actually real thing, but because it kind of revitalized this long debunked hypothesis of the aquatic ape and made people, it kind of gave new life to it, to the point that now people flood my TikTok comments with it all the time. It's very annoying for me personally, and I have to like be annoyed by it constantly. But all of that is to say, scientists have tried the whole maybe there are mermaids thing. It got debunked already, but it's fun to think about. So, to answer the listener's question.
I thought you were going to say, but they're real.
No, yeah, right.
But little did you know I have one in my house.
It's locked up in my basement.
Yeah, I've been holding on to it for just this moment. This is where the news is breaking.
Gosh, journalism.
So to answer the listener's question, I think we have to just kind of say, what if? What if they did?
Mm-hmm.
What if I'm going to interpret this as if mermaids exist, the if mermaids exist part. I'm going to interpret that as what if there was a branch of maybe an early human species split off and went back into the ocean. We've seen terrestrial animals go back into the ocean many times. Whales and dolphins started as ungulates. They had these, early hooves, and they went back into the ocean. So
they're like,
we've
this
seen it
sucks.
happen. Yeah, like pinnipeds, like sea lions and seals. They went back into the ocean. Manatees, completely different like branch of the animal family tree. They also went back into the ocean. Like we've seen this happen quite a few times. It's not like that far-fetched.
Yeah. I had even heard that the myth of mermaids comes from sailors seeing manatees.
I'd heard that too.
And I guess they were real lonely and horny because they were like, damn.
Yeah.
Now, okay, this is funny to me because have you guys ever seen manatees in the wild, like in person?
I haven't seen
Not in
them
the wild,
no.
I'm from Florida.
Oh, okay.
I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of manatees in person in the wild. There's no way. Because from above the water, it's literally just, it looks like a big rock. Like, there's no way.
Like a
there's
hump.
no
Just
way
a
you're
hump.
mistaking this thing for a person. It's just a big
kind of
rock.
what I always thought when I had heard that.
That's what I
They
thought.
saw manatees. And I'm like, manatees.
Of all things.
You barely even clock that it's an animal.
Yeah.
I just, maybe if they described it to somebody, there's a great Instagram account that's medieval art of animals from like faraway places. It's just the worst, like horrible children's level art of just imagine somebody describing an animal you've never seen.
It is a lot of game of telephone. I mean, that's how we got unicorns.
So funny.
Was by someone describing rhinos, and then like over time they're like, I don't know, horse with horn. So like
horse with a big horn on it.
Yeah, but I don't think it's that far-fetched to imagine a branch of primates that returned to the, even like a hominid, right? Maybe something even as recent as like from the Homo genus, split off and went into the ocean. I don't think that's so far-fetched. I think we can riff on that. I think we can have fun with that.
As the poet Sebastian said, under the sea, darling, it's better, down where it's wetter. Take it from me.
Take it from me, yeah. So I think that if humans did adapt to being aquatic, first, I don't think they would need to go into the deeper parts of the ocean because being mammals with like a high metabolism, I think mermaids would need access to much more regular sort of nutritionally dense food than you would find in the deep sea. Because once you get into the deep sea, food is few and far between. And most of the stuff you're going to find there is going to be things like jellyfish or like planktonic microorganisms, like things that are, it's not going to be a lot of bang for your buck, basically. And
we talked about why you need the sharp, pointy teeth, right?
Yeah.
Like grab on to stuff.
When you find a friend under the ocean, stab him with your pointy teeth and take him everywhere with you.
Never let go.
But I think that like being a high metabolism sort of like mammal, I think we would need access to more frequent food than we would find in the deep. Also, we would probably still need to come up for air.
Yeah.
And being in the deep would mean we would have, I mean, we could do like what sperm whales do and just do a lot of diving and resurfacing. But I mean, I think we would probably stay in coastal shallow waters if we were mermaids. I think we would probably stay closer to the shore. But just for funsies, if mermaids were adapted to deeper parts of the oceans, I would actually see them going in more of a blobfish direction. I would see them doing with maybe more soft-bodied, because they have to survive pressure, right? When you get into the deeper parts of the ocean, you have to survive under lots and lots of water pressure. So I'm imagining lots of very soft, very flabby skin. So blobfish, for example, they don't have a swim bladder because their swim bladder would pop under the pressure that they have. So to control their buoyancy in the water, they have this very flabby, soft skin, so that they can sort of, like, the fat is very buoyant, so it can help them, like, control their buoyancy in the water without being crushed under pressure. So I could see us doing something like that, maybe adapting to have softer bones that aren't going to snap under the pressure of water. So maybe like softer or thinner bones, right, that aren't going to be so like rigid in the water. They'd also probably need very large eyes to see in the darkness, because humans are very visual, and I don't think we would go as far as to like go in the opposite direction. I don't think we'd go no eyes. A lot of things in the deep go no eyes because they're like, what am I seeing down here anyway?
When am I going to use it? Yeah.
I don't think we're going that way because we're so visual already. I think we're going big eyes.
That also supports your hypothesis of them staying in the shallows, because what is it, like 15 meters below water? There's not
you get
really
too deep,
enough
you're not
light
seeing
to really
anything.
See. You really, if you're going to stay in the shallows, you do need to be able to still see things. And it's still like an evolutionary advantage, similar to kind of what Greg was saying in my answer of if it has to do with how you find food, how you find a mate, or I can't remember the third one already because that's how my brain works, that, that it's probably selected for that.
Do you think, right, because there's also some deep sea adaptations to hide from predators, and they include either being translucent, right, like the clear sort of animals, or having bioluminescence, or my favorite one is when a lot of deep sea animals are red. Since red light, with the least amount of energy of the wavelengths of colored light, penetrates the shallowest right before it just stops going farther in the ocean. If you ever like go on a scuba dive and cut your finger, your blood doesn't look red when it comes out because there's no red light to reflect. And so, a lot of deep sea prey animals that try and hide, they are red, which effectively makes them invisible, which I think is really cool. So, but I'm wondering if it came up to the surface, it's like horrible humanoid fish thing that's also like bright red.
Yeah, and red is not a difficult color for the human body to produce. So, if we were going to try to be like blue or purple or something, we'd be out of luck because we don't have the right pigments to make blue. So, but we could do red easy, like we could turn pretty red. Like, I think that would be, if we were going to go deep sea, I think we'd want to be bright red. But I think the big eyes are important. Long needle teeth, that's important.
So Ariel being a redhead, though, that part is accurate.
That totally tracks.
So
totally accurate.
Now, that does bring up, though, the hair problem. Because all of that long flowing hair, huge issue. That is creating a lot of drag in the water. It's also giving a lot of opportunities for predators to grab it because it's anchored firmly to the hair. Right? So a predator could easily yank that hair, and like you're done. So like you gotta lose
no
hair.
No capes.
So bald.
We're going totally bald. I think we can maybe keep some of the hair like around the face probably, but it would have to be kept very, very short. So you see things like seals and whales even still have some remnants of hairs, but it's mostly just for feeling the water around you. It's like a sensory hair, which would be good for feeling like the movement of the water around you. So I think maybe we're keeping some facial hair, maybe even, seeing more facial hair across the species, not just like for, facial hair tends to be more prominent in male humans. Maybe we're seeing not so much dimorphism. Maybe like females become a little bit more likely to grow more facial hair. So I think we're seeing more facial hair, less anywhere else hair.
Head hair. Yeah.
I think that's got to be like, as soon as we're getting in the water, we're losing that hair. I think that's gone.
Here's something that Riley alluded to. I'm curious though, do you think scales enter the picture at all?
I did actually think about scales. I don't think scales are out of the question. I think they're possible because there are some mammals with scales. There are pangolins. They have scales that are made out of keratin. So it's not impossible. I could even see the human like legs being fused together to form a tail, because we see this happen with things like sea lions and seals and even dolphins and whales. You can see sort of in the skeleton of them, you can see where the legs fuse together. You can see remnants of like old hip bones. And in the seal, I think if you look at a seal skeleton, you can still see the leg bones. They're just together in one sort of tail. So I think that's possible. The human legs fuse together to form a tail. The feet become the flukes of the tail. That's usually how we see it happen, like with terrestrial animals that go into the water. I think it's not going to become a full fish tail, but I think it's going to look like a fish tail the way that like a dolphins do. But I don't see scales being out of the question. I see them being possible, although they're going to have to be kind of localized to areas that aren't going to require a lot of movement. Like, I think they're going to have to be maybe on the sides. If we're not doing a lot of like side to side movement, I think you're not going to want them in a place where the scales are going to restrict movement.
Okay, so you'd probably maybe like I can see them protecting like the rib cage too or something like that.
Like
but
the
then
underbelly.
like if you're flexing your spine, and your legs, the way dolphins have to swim, and it would interfere with that movement, maybe no scales like that. So you kind of have like an inverse mermaid where like the top humanoid still looking part is scale covered and then the rest is still kind of fleshy and squishy exposed.
I'm thinking maybe scales along the side so that it's
like
not
racing
like
stripes.
Yeah.
Cool.
But they would be, if they are keratin scales, then they're mostly going to be like brown, like sort of brown colored scales. Because keratin, imagine like a rhinoceros's horn, your fingernails are made of keratin.
Right.
So it's going to look like your body's covered in fingernails, basically, which is not horrifying at all.
It can come in different colors too, I guess. But
Then you can paint them. You could paint little scales.
why not? Think of the keratin art we could make. Like
So now you're imagining a mermaid that's just the whole body is covered in fingernails, just little tiny fingernails poking out.
This is a horror show.
All right, Nightmare. Yeah, got it. Yeah,
got it.
Great.
Understood. That's wild. I'm just thinking of like a fleshy fish person. Like the fleshy part is the weird part to me.
See, if we're something that's staying closer to the shore, I don't think we need to be so fleshy. Like the flabbiness, I think, would benefit us if we were going like deep into the water. But if we're staying close to the shore, I don't think we need to be that like soft bodied. Though we are still going to need a good bit of fat to keep us warm in the water. But it's probably going to all sort of round out the way that like we're going to kind of become sort of torpedo shaped. That's just the most hydrodynamic shape. Basically, everything that goes into the water becomes that shaped.
Our foramen magnum would probably also migrate, right? The hole that our spine connects through our skull to.
Oh yeah,
right?
that's true because it did.
On whales, it's shifted to like the back of their skulls,
Yeah.
but ours is underneath, so we can walk upright. But yeah, you'd probably have like a forward-facing head, which would be horrifying.
I don't know which would be more difficult, whether the spinal connection would have to shift or we could just change the way our face is built. Because I was thinking our face being shaped the way it is, how it's sort of a flat, blunt shape in the front, that's no good for swimming. This is not helping, right? We're breaking up a lot of that water flow in the front. So I think we would have to have a more tapered sort of face shape that's like tapering towards the front, maybe like a longer nose. Also, the nose, I think, would need to seal closed. Like, we can't just have these two open holes.
You'd have to have a muscle. There'd have to be something in here that can help you do that.
So if you've ever closely watched a seal that's swimming, first of all, their nose is aligned with the top of their face, so they don't have to bring their whole head out of the water to breathe. If we wanted to breathe, we would have to like bring our whole face up, right? The seal's nose is right at the top, so they can just poke just the nostrils out. But the nostrils are closed by default. Like they are just like idly sealed shut. They have to exert effort to open their nose. They have to pull their nose open. Sense. Yeah, because it keeps water out of their nose. So I think we'd have to have something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, can you imagine if we just had water going into your nose all the time as a mermaid? It'd be horrible.
That's why, like, a lot of people...
Horrible way to live.
Some people try to argue with me that, like, the fact that our nostrils point down is, like, an aquatic adaptation because the water... I'm like, bruh. Like, have you ever...
You see a lot of these noses under the water? You see a lot of these noses underwater? I don't think so. I don't think so.
You see the synchronized swimmers at the Olympics? They all got the little clamp thing. Yeah.
We have to wear a clamp because our nose is actually not good at keeping water out.
And our ears, for that matter.
It's
right?
not good. None of this is good for being in the water. So I think we're having to workshop some of this. I think the nose is sealed shut. I think the nose is sort of aligned with the top of the head. Have you guys ever watched Attack on Titan?
Yeah, first season. Yeah.
Oh, you only watched the first season?
It's an anime.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say there's a certain Titan that looks exactly like what I'm thinking of. I'm just going to tell you, maybe you could try to look it up and see what I'm talking about. Look up Cart Titan.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Except for the nose. You have to be able to close it for sure.
But the nose is, you see how it's like aligned with the top of the head though. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
whole head is like long and tapered and narrow. I think that would be a good head shape for a mermaid. An elongated snout. Now,
Yucky.
in a lot of pop culture, mermaids are depicted as being able to breathe underwater. And I think I need to humor this a little bit. I don't think this is something we could like, I've never heard of any terrestrial vertebrate readapting to breathing water. I've never heard of that.
Yes.
I don't think that's ever happened. But let's humor it.
Sure.
Let's hear it out. Let's hear it out. Because in pop culture, mermaids are able to breathe underwater, which is why they have a whole city underwater, because they don't have to come back up for air. So if a real life mermaid could breathe underwater, that would imply that they have gills. Now, in like very, very early stages of fetal development, human embryos have these structures that are called pharyngeal slits. So in fish, these same structures, the pharyngeal slits, they develop to become gills. But in humans, they don't. They become things like our jaw and our like middle ear. They do other anatomical stuff. It's not gills. So a lot of people actually have a little hole in their ear that's called a preauricular sinus. And that's thought to be pharyngeal slits that didn't quite close up all the way, which is sort of like a really ancient leftover from our ancestors' gills, because all tetrapods came from, you go way back, you're going to hit fish. You go back far enough in anyone's family tree, you're hitting fish.
We're fish, technically.
We're all fish.
We fall under the big umbrella of fish still to this day.
100%.
If we are all fish, then none of us are.
Right.
So I think the most logical place for gills on a mermaid to be would be the reemergence of gills from the pharyngeal slits. So that would put them around like our lower jaw, sort of right under the ears. Actually, it kind of looked like in Riley's tattoo, the gill placement there was like, it looked like there were some sort of like ridges that I'm assuming were gills. And that was kind of what I was thinking of. It looked like they were right underneath the mermaid's jaw. So that seems to be the most logical place for gills to be, I think.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll humor it. I'll allow it.
Yeah, a lot of this is going to be vibes. Like, you have to let some of this slide. Yeah. Okay, so you see, you've brought up a picture now of Riley's tattoo again.
Which we'll put on our Instagram, by the way. We'll put it out there so you can see
those little like ridges along the neck, that's kind of what I'm imagining. Those could be something like gills. I also like that in Riley's tattoo, instead of hair, because like I mentioned, the hair's got to go, these are more like tendrils. And the tendrils, I've seen a lot of deep sea creatures with long tendrils. Those tend to be things like prey capture. So like jellyfish might have tentacles that when something touches one of the tentacles, they'll, absorb it back up so that they can eat the food. In oarfish have these long tendrils that have little bioluminescent paddles on the end to sort of draw predators away from the main body of the animal. So maybe if there was going to be some bioluminescence, we could have like some long tendrils. I don't know of any bioluminescence in mammals. I don't know of bioluminescence in any vertebrates, but I do know of biofluorescence, which is where an animal's body, like you see this in platypuses and wombats and some other types of, I know it's in some marsupials and monotremes and stuff, but if you shine a black light over them, they will glow.
Yeah. Those are
so,
fun.
Right.
Not totally bioluminescence, but like it's something. So I could see biofluorescence being a thing because it's a thing in mammals,
Also, if we're visual, if we're visual beings, maybe some, in this branch of evolution, it becomes some find a mate kind of thing. I'm underwater in this dark environment. I can fluoresce a little bit or do something that attracts a mate more.
We would also need to adapt our eye shape, I think. I think maybe the round pupil is not going to be working so great for us. I think maybe I'm thinking of like an octopus sometimes has a vertical or a horizontal. So cuttlefish have a W-shaped pupil, which is really helpful for seeing different amounts of light in different parts of the water column. So like the narrow points at the top help them see the bright areas, but then the broad bands at the bottom help them see the dark areas.
Cool.
So it's a pretty cool way for them to see like at different light levels based on whether they're looking up or down.
Without having to dilate. Yeah.
I think they can dilate, if it's like nighttime, right? And it's going to be dark. They can open up there. So I'm thinking maybe more something like a pupil shape tweak to help us see in lower light. Also in Riley's mermaid tattoo, this mermaid still has long arms and long fingers. I don't think we would keep those. I think we're getting rid of those. I think we're doing maybe not getting rid of arms. That's a little too extreme, I think. Maybe they're becoming much shorter so that they
have to be
like
for something, like for eating. They'd have to be for like grasping and getting food, or there'd have to be a benefit to them, right?
And for humans, manual dexterity is really important to us. Like, it is a huge advantage that we have. I don't think we're totally getting rid of that because it's something that is we're so adapted to it. We're so specialized in manual dexterity. I think maybe we're going the way of otters and maybe having like very short arms that aren't going to drag us down too much in the water, but also having those fingers, right?
That are super cute.
Still able to break open some clams on your tummy.
Yeah, I think we still have fingers, but I think we're shortening them. I think we're making them much shorter, but still having them as an option. And also still having our thumbs. Please don't lose your thumbs. If you've got thumbs, you got to hold on to those things for dear life.
Yeah, for sure. That's like a huge advantage.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't really draw a picture for you.
I mean,
I wish I had thought ahead to try to draw a picture. But yeah, I think that's some of the things I'm looking for. An elongated snout with a nose at the top that seals shut. I'm looking for long, sharp teeth. I'm looking for short arms. And I'm thinking we keep the fingers.
6 figures and trust fund. That's what I'm looking for.
Trust fund.
Wait, are we describing your ideal man, or?
Yeah, blue eyes.
Oh, and also definitely webbing between the fingers for sure.
Oh yeah, all webbing all day.
Can you imagine if the live-action Little Mermaid remake had gone in this direction? Because I think it would have done better at the box office.
It would have done numbers.
Yeah.
But like with a completely different demographic.
Yeah.
All the horror freaks. All the sickos.
Exactly. Honestly, a horror Little Mermaid kind of parody, I think there's something there.
In reality, it's not even really a parody. It's just you're looking at it with not rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
I do think that mermaids are underutilized in horror. There's something there, you know?
Don't go in the water.
I think, especially, a theme I find a lot in horror is kind of being manipulated, by some beautiful but dangerous creature. I think that's something
like a siren
that isn't. Yes, exactly. Or a succubus or something. It's kind of innately, there's something really scary about that mix of desire and lust with something that's fatal. And I think a mermaid has a lot of potential to play into that.
Because she could drag you down, right? Like she could drag you into the water. And I think it could be really cool. I mean, the mermaid that I have described for y'all today is not performing that role.
Oh God, I think the funniest I've ever laughed at a Flight of the Conchords episode was when one of them starts dating an Australian and Murray is like, Australians, they used to lure sailors to the deaths, drag them down below the waves.
Nice Murray accent. That was good.
Murray,
that was really good.
That's sirens, but I cried laughing. It's my favorite bit that Australians are like sirens. But yeah, still, Riley's tattoo, though, she clearly put a lot of thought into some details. Because when you start picking it out, it's like, yeah, I can see a lot of these adaptations. It had a forward-facing face, like I've talked about with the Foreman Magnum moving back. I'm like, yeah, this is clearly something Riley cares deeply about and has applied her biology studies to imagining it. That was so cool.
I love speculative. So cool. What is it? Speculative biology or speculative evolution? Is that? I was thinking about the whole idea that not very many primates can swim at all.
Yeah.
We're one of very few primates that can swim.
A lot of primates are terrified of water. They don't even go near it, and they get all their water from the fruit they eat.
So one of the things is the ratio of limb lengths. So we're one of very few primates that has longer legs than arms. Most other primates have longer arms than they have legs. We have by far the highest ratio of leg length to arm length. So a lot of primates just have much longer arms, and it's just not good for keeping them up in the water. I think it just kind of makes them have a hard time propelling themselves. But some primates can swim pretty well, actually. Proboscis monkeys are found in Indonesia and are Southeast Asia, and often live in mangroves or live over waterways, so they fall in the water all the time or just jump in for fun. So proboscis monkeys are known for being able to swim. Orangutans can also swim, but the denser, more muscular primates like chimpanzees and gorillas cannot swim at all.
Yeah.
They can't even float. They just sink right to the bottom.
Right.
Because they don't have that, like I mentioned earlier, that like high percentage of like subcutaneous fat that helps humans float. You know, those primates that don't have as much fat on their body, they sink right to the bottom.
They're just muscle and bone.
Yeah. So I think like a human-derived mermaid would have to really lean into the subcutaneous fat. There would have to be like lots of fat on the body, which means like a very sort of high-fat diet, like a diet that they're going to be able to pack on a lot of pounds for, which is why I don't necessarily think they're going deep sea. But like if they did, that would be cool too.
They're feeding on seals and narwhals and all the blubber.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. So that's what I think a real life mermaid would look like. It would not be pretty, but it would be
terrifying.
Cool.
It would
Not
be cool.
sexy. Again, you'd have to be a lonely, horny sailor to be like, oh yeah.
Like, how many days have you been drinking seawater that you are looking at that and being like, yes, please?
I'ma do it. I'ma hold my grog.
On that note,
Hear me out. Hear me out.
Listen.
On that note, let's let everyone ponder that while we take another break and come right back. And welcome back yet again to the final chapter of this episode of That's Absurd, Please Elaborate. Julian, do you also have a question that has to do somewhat with taxonomy?
Would you believe it? Not really. No.
Oh, okay.
No, I know. Combo breaker. Sorry.
Yeah.
But it is biology related, or it gets to that. And I deeply love it and the rabbit hole that it made me follow. So I'll just tell you, our question comes from Wren. And Wren asks, if you made a mirrored duplicate of Trace, would he survive? Would he be evil?
Oh, no.
Wren elaborates, saying, if some enterprising individual was to create a duplicate of Trace, it sounds like they're working on this like in their basement, that was perfectly mirrored down to the molecular level, would he survive? Would he be evil? This is naturally completely hypothetical. Okay, good. I'm glad that Wren assured
Sounded
us.
so defensive. If someone who was definitely not me cloned Trace.
Was cloning Trace. But for some reason, the technology I've invented to do it produces a molecularly mirrored Trace.
Wow.
What would the consequences be? I think Wren's asking, like, why do my Trace clones keep dying?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
What I heard
Dang it.
kind of at the end of all that.
I could be left-handed? That'd be fun.
That's what I was thinking, right? So I started at like the macro level.
Yeah.
You know, if you were a mirrored version of you and you were left-handed, right? Would anybody care? Maybe somebody would notice.
I mean, I would care.
I always notice when people are left-handed. I don't know why. Everybody important in my life always seems to end up being left-handed. My wife, multiple very close best friends. I don't know why.
I'm not
I
left-handed,
just
so I know where I stand in your
people.
life.
Yeah, you're a rung below that. But I also love the evil twin trope thing.
Yeah.
And I've thought about it a lot. I remember when I was a kid, there was, did you ever watch the show Darkwing Duck?
Oh, yeah. Let's get dangerous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they have an episode where there's like an evil, identical version of Darkwing, and the only thing that sets him apart is like these big old thick eyebrows that just won't quit. And
Traditionally evil big eyebrows.
yes. I remember being like 5 though, and he's doing all this evil stuff that's so out of character for Darkwing, and all of the people around him are like, what's going on with you, man? And I was like, how do you not see the eyebrows? Like, not understanding that was a cue to me, the child viewer, and not the people in the world around him, right?
Have either of you ever made a major, like, hair or, like, face change overnight, right?
Yeah.
It's easier for me to describe as a man with facial hair. You might grow a beard and then you shave it off and you go about your day the next day. The surprising thing is most people will not notice. They will not notice a single change.
Yeah, people are generally unobservant. Side note, you want to score easy points, notice.
Yeah.
Like if somebody gets their hair done and you just say, did you get your hair done? You can make their day. That was one of the...
Even if you're wrong.
The second time I saw my mother-in-law and I noticed her hair had been like lightened and dyed, and I asked her, like, did you get your hair dyed? She just stopped dead in her tracks and went, yes. And then she was like, Dawn, her husband, he didn't notice. It's been 3 weeks.
That's a power move right there.
Way to go.
Just a note to throw out there. Also, I happen to know that both of them listen to this podcast. So
they're going to be delighted that you mentioned it.
We had the fun experience of my husband, who has been growing a beard for maybe 8 years or so. Big bushy beard, and shaved it recently in front of our 3-year-old son, who has never seen him without a beard, did not know it was possible for him to not have a beard.
Trauma.
So we knew that he was going to be pissed if all of a sudden Daddy just didn't have a beard anymore, right? We were like, we have to shave it with him in the room. He has to witness it happening for him to understand that you're still the same person. So sure did, had him in the room, shaved his beard off, and the child was not pleased. He did not like that at all.
That's hysterical.
He was so mad.
One more fun anecdote, then we'll keep it moving. But I had a friend who, her entire life, her dad had a mustache. Not like a crazy handlebar or curly, just like a little
not an evil
lip
mustache.
caterpillar, right? And then she went off to college, and she came home one day, and he had shaved it off, and she walked into their house and saw him, and she called the cops. She thought it was like an intruder.
No, it's me, honey. Get out of my house!
Tell me something only my dad would know.
Version of Dad.
Tell me something only my dad would know. Well, when you're changing a tire, the first thing you...
all right, you're good.
Yeah, you pass. But no, I really like the idea of like the evil version of somebody. The only way to tell them apart would be like they're mirrored. I think that would be really cool.
Very
like,
subtle.
I don't know if my wife would pick up on like, my mole being moved to the other side of my face or whatever. I have a lot of moles, so, there'd be a lot of clues, but still, who's keeping track that much? I don't know if anybody would notice at like a macro level, but I do think it would be of interest to the police because if, say, mirror image trace were to commit a crime and leave fingerprints at the scene, they wouldn't match normal Trace's fingerprints, right?
Ooh.
Like, everybody has unique fingerprints, and that includes identical twins. Their fingerprints are not the same. And, fingerprints, they have patterns that follow into, like, 3 broad groups. There's arches, loops, and whorls, But the question is, right, are they the same, from one hand to the other? Are they mirror images of each other? No, they're not. So if mirror trace were to leave fingerprints at a crime scene, it wouldn't come up, as trace in the database. It would be very confusing if there was also like video camera footage, right? It would be an interesting mystery.
I'm looking at my fingers now.
Yeah, right?
That makes me wonder, oh my gosh, would your DNA be different?
Oh, I went into that spiral too, Ellen.
No.
And it's great.
Would like the A's and the C's be flipped and
No. Okay, Trace is onto something here. But first, we have to talk about an important concept in organic chemistry.
I know this
one. That is, Trace, you want to say it?
I love this word. Chirality.
Chirality. Yes, right?
It's awesome.
So, chirality is when two things are non-superimposable mirror images. The example that is easy to understand that they always tell you is like your hands are, chiral structures, right? If you look at your 2 palms, you can see the similarities. You can see they're the same structure. But if you put one hand on top of the other, like back your hand to palm of the other one, your left thumb and your right thumb don't overlap, right?
You have to flip it over.
Yes. But now it's not a mirror image, right? The back of your hand does not look the same as the palm of your hand.
Right.
Okay. This concept applies down at the molecular level, and it comes up a lot in organic chemistry, and it is very important. Because, when we are first learning chemistry and we're taught, like, the molecular formula of things, right? We're just taught, like, letters and numbers that tell you how many of what element are in something. But that is far from a complete picture. For example, trace. What is the molecular formula for glucose?
C6H12O6.
Correct. 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, 6 oxygens, right? What is the molecular formula for fructose?
Oh, I don't know.
You've already said it.
C6H12O6.
It's C6H12O6.
Got it.
Right? So it's the same atoms, but these ones in between glucose and fructose, they're assembled differently, like different, carbons and oxygens combined, like next to each other. The pattern's not exactly the same, so they're a different molecule. This is called a structural isomer, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Same building blocks assembled differently. But there are ways that you can still build things so, all the same atoms are connected to each other, but in a different arrangement. And that is an enantiomer, right? That you get mirror image molecules that are same arrangement, but they're non-superimposable mirror images. They're chiral. Mm-hmm. And so we call these like left-handed or right-handed molecules. And like I said, very important in organic chemistry and thus also in biology. So cool things about chiral molecules is they interact with polarized light, which I think is really fascinating.
What?
Yes. And so this was kind of like early experiments by, among other scientists, Louis Pasteur, the pasteurization guy. They looked into how when you arrange, molecules to be either left-handed or right-handed, when you have like a solution of these molecules, say you only have all these, quote unquote, left-handed molecules, and you shine polarized light, light that's all in one plane through a tube of these molecules will rotate that light. So when it comes out the other end of the tube, it'll have gone counterclockwise if it's left-handed.
Huh.
And likewise, if it's a right-handed molecule, it'll rotate things clockwise. So if your enantiomer rotates light clockwise, it's dextrorotary, right? Or you put like a D in front of the name of that molecule.
To illustrate that it's chiral in that way.
Yeah. If you rotate it counterclockwise, it's levorotary. And these are the Latin words for right and left, right? Dexter, levorotary. So it tells you, the D or the L, kind of which way the molecule is arranged. And funny enough, in biology, there is a strong bias towards one or the other, depending on the type of molecule. So it turns out virtually all amino acids are left-handed and all sugars are right-handed. So imagine we have Trace, right?
Yeah.
Like mirror Trace, and we mirror him. Another thing that's almost entirely right-handed when we find it in nature is, like you alluded to, DNA.
Yeah.
So we have found multiple forms of DNA. B form is the most common one. That's the one described by Watson and Crick. There's also A form. A and B form are both right-handed double helix structures. The way you can think of it is, if you know how DNA kind of looks like a ladder or a staircase, right?
Right.
Imagine you're walking up the ladder, right? If you put your outside hand on basically the handrail that is the outside of the DNA molecule.
Got it.
Depending on which hand you use, that tells you the handedness.
Oh.
So if you're walking up and you put your right hand on the outside railing, it's a right-handed twist.
Got it.
And if you put your left hand on the railing, it's a left-handed twist, right? This is a fun thing that a lot of biology friends I have that are specialized in DNA, they get very irritated because left-handed DNA is used all the time in like emojis and like promotional pictures, even by like biotech companies where they should know better, but the artist making it doesn't. This whatever image they're making.
And that would be such an easy fix too. Just flip it.
Yep.
It would be. Just mirror it.
They may have like flipped the footage as well. I mean, it's sometimes an illustration that maybe it was correct. And then whoever in the edit, they were like, oh, look, it could be cooler if the DNA was coming from the left side of the screen. So they just flipped the image and they're like, we just did it.
Not knowing that they just like completely killed this creature.
Yeah, you made the DNA all wrong. Or like maybe they're trying to avoid copyright. They take it like the YouTube filter.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Bam.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So this is one of those things that if you like to shout at the TV like I do, like when it's a drone shot or a probe lens, or some kind of videography thing, I'm just like, oh, that DNA is wrong. You can just keep in mind.
We have found in nature left-handed DNA, and that's Z form, but it doesn't look like a mirror image of B form. It's all kind of zigzaggy along the, the spine of the double helix, hence the Z name. So it's not the same as just like a mirror image of your normal DNA. It is its own kind of category. There's separate differences.
Oh, it's so squiggly.
So Here's the thing, though. Because pretty much everything in your body is making like things in either left-handed or right-handed configurations, right? Including proteins for which the shape of them is essential to how they function. If we have, say, MER-TRAAACE committing a crime and he leaves his DNA at the crime scene, the police, using the techniques they use right now for DNA analysis, would not be able to analyze the DNA.
Wow, that's
right?
cool.
So the way they do it right now, it was a big breakthrough that happened in the 80s. You're probably used to it post-COVID, but it's using PCR.
Yeah.
Which is polymerase chain reaction.
Yeah.
And you remember that it kind of became more commonly heard during COVID. And the way it works is really ingenious. Basically, a scientist figured out, hey, there's this organism that lives in hot springs, right? At very high temperatures. So its proteins have adapted to work at higher temperatures than our proteins do, right? And like any organism, right, it needs a way to replicate its DNA for like cell division, meiosis, mitosis, right? So their proteins that copy DNA work at higher temperatures. So PCR, the process, takes that protein that copies DNA. It's very unoriginally called DNA polymerase.
Oh.
Yeah, easy to remember,
yeah.
Right? You take the sample of DNA, and you only need a little bit, and it doesn't have to be perfect, right? You heat it up so the two strands of the ladder come apart, right? The double helix denatures and breaks up. You cool it down a little bit, still pretty hot, but you cool it down, and you attach like artificial little starter chains of DNA that complement the DNA sample you're trying to make, right? And they latch onto one end, and then this high temperature DNA polymerase goes down the DNA and assembles the complementary strand. And then if you do this again, you basically get the complete set of DNA that you're looking for, and then you just repeat the cycle. You heat the DNA up to break it apart. You cool it down a little bit so the primers can attach where they need to go, and the DNA polymerase can start just printing out the replicated strand. And within hours, you can have just millions and millions of copies of what you started with. So it makes then analyzing this DNA possible.
Right.
You can actually like figure out, what the molecular compound of it, because you have enough to work.
You can copy and paste
it.
it.
Problem in forensic science. Yes, just over and over and over again. Well, that DNA polymerase is going to work on right-handed B-form DNA, but not Trace's mirror form DNA. There's no way.
So you're untraceable.
At least until they develop in a lab. The untraceable trace.
Wow.
Amazing.
I love it.
Amazing.
I love it.
Yeah, so there's no way for them to like actually get your DNA sequence, to match it against anything, because the PCR just wouldn't work. And at this point, going through this research, I am imagining a crime movie.
Yeah.
That's like this mystery of MER-TRAAACE going around and committing these crimes.
Name of the movie is Leave No Trace. Nailed it.
So good.
Nailed it.
So they could eventually, right, if they use the same techniques that like Rosalind Franklin first used to actually take a picture of your DNA, right, X-ray crystallography, and like they could photograph it, basically, then they could catch on like, wait a minute, this guy's DNA is going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Something weird is afoot here.
Hey man, your DNA is on backwards.
Oh, snap. You know what? It's so embarrassing when you leave the house with your DNA on backwards.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah. Crap.
Yeah. Left-handed right down to his DNA. So the problem also for MER-TRAAACE is, okay, cool, like he can commit crimes with basic impunity. Nobody's going to catch on to who he is. But MER-TRAAACE basically can't survive for very long.
I can't eat food
in this world.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because, like, sure, you can drink water, breathe air, right? Those are, like, well, H2O isn't chiral, oxygen, O2 isn't chiral, but other things that you need to survive are, like glucose, right? Chirality affects a lot of things that you eat. It can actually affect the flavor of something you're eating. You can have the exact same atoms, But if they're arranged right-handed, it might taste like one thing, and if they're arranged left-handed, it's a completely different taste. Menthol has more of a cooling effect in one configuration than it does in the other. It actually triggers those sensors wherever it touches, that like feel for cool much more effectively in one configuration than another.
It's like how my kid likes potatoes, but not mashed potatoes.
Yeah, same
thing,
stuff, different
it's
structure.
The same stuff.
Nope. Nope.
That's interesting.
So imagine, right? Mirror-Trace is born into this world with all his memories and stuff, but then he tries to, say, eat certain food items, and they don't taste how he remembers. They taste totally different. And then, imagine this. Glucose, like I alluded to, is left or right-handed. It is predominantly, almost entirely in the natural world, the right-handed version of glucose, D-glucose, because that is what our cells can break down. L-glucose, actually, they've done experiments. It tastes almost the same as D-glucose, like it's just as sweet, but our bodies cannot digest it.
Oh, no.
There was actually talk of using it as an artificial sweetener. The story's bananas. There was a scientist named Dr. Gilbert Levin, and would you believe it, this whole story actually starts with a Mars mission.
No, it doesn't.
Yes. Yes, it does. So this scientist was proposing experiments to test for microbes on Mars. And the thinking was, okay, we'll get something that these microbes can eat, right? We collect a little sample of the dirt, we put it in a little chamber with some food for them, but the food has radioactive elements in it, like carbon, carbon-14. And then when they consume it and they exhale their CO2 or whatever, we detect the radiation given off. So if we detect radiation in this little chamber, we know, oh, microbes are eating this glucose. But Levin realized, hey, here on Earth, almost everything actually, eats D-glucose. But what if these microbes on Mars, what if they're more left-handed predominant? What if they can't break down D-glucose, but they can break down L-glucose? So he came up with a way of manufacturing L-glucose to use it for this Mars mission. And it was on the original 2 Viking probes, Vikings 1 and 2, missions to Mars, which were like the first probes back in the 60s, right? Obviously, they didn't find any life on Mars. I think we would all know that if that were the case.
Send them some dark sugar just in case.
Send them as a treat. But then he had this idea of, what if I use this as an artificial sweetener? Something for people on a diet or people who are diabetic, right? And so he did experiments. Does this taste like sugar? Yes, to most people, they couldn't tell the difference. It just tasted like normal glucose, but then they didn't break it down and get any of the energy benefits from the sugar.
Yeah.
So he tried to start a company where he would make L-glucose as a sugar replacement, but the process was just way too expensive for it to be commercially viable, right? When there are other cheaper sugar replacements that you could use instead. And he tried multiple different left-handed sugars, like L-fructose and L-lactose, right? But none of them he could produce cheaply enough. But still, I thought that was fascinating.
That's so neat.
Right? But for Mirror-Trace, he's in the position now where all the glucose that he can eat is going to be the wrong glucose.
Oh, no. He's going to need to call up that Mars guy and be like, hey, you still got any of that? You still got any of that dark sugar sitting around? Because turns out I need it.
Oh my gosh.
Insane. So he's going to have low blood sugar. He's probably going to be a little cranky, is what I'm thinking.
Oh no.
And wasting away.
So Mirror-Trace is born immediately. The clock is ticking.
Right.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, unless he can somehow find a way to find like left-handed food sources, he can actually break down. And then there's the problem too, like your proteins are going to be chiral and like the molecules that build them, right? Like the amino acids I talked about earlier are almost all right-handed.
And then your body would have to be taking in proteins that are going to be right-handed, right? Like your body is going to have a hard time breaking down. Like if you're eating meat, you're going to be eating meat that's made with right-handed proteins. So like your body's not necessarily going to be able to break that down the same way.
There's no reason. Seems like matter, antimatter, right? Is there a reason that everything's right-handed? Or is it just they just happen to be?
I'm so glad you asked that.
Okay.
So, we don't know. But
I love it when we don't know.
there's a very interesting idea that was put forward in the 60s. There were two chemists in Cambridge and Germany, and they were researching. They had this idea because if you remember, we talked about this in an episode that we did like 6 months ago, Trace, on like how to describe something as left to an alien, right? And that is that like at the subatomic level, right, when atoms decay through like the weak interaction, they actually tend to favor releasing beta emissions, basically electrons or positrons, that have a left-handed spin.
Right. Correct.
And so some scientists in the 60s thought, because there's this bias towards releasing left-handed beta radiation, does that interact with chiral molecules in a noticeable way? So they investigated it, and they found a small effect, but they did find that it tended to break down or destroy left-handed molecules more frequently. So maybe this small but still like present preference for chiral molecules of a certain handedness influenced how life developed in the universe. Or maybe it's just one of those quirks of like, things started out, you know, with your right-handed DNA, your right-handed sugars, your left-handed amino acids, and they just stayed that way because once you start building that way, you just have to continue in that direction.
Yeah, like the matter-antimatter thing.
Yes.
We just happen to be made of matter because at some point after the Big Bang, that was what was left after all the annihilation.
Just a slight, imbalance, and that's enough.
A survivor bias.
Yeah.
This is the one that just didn't get destroyed.
Yep.
Maybe. But I still thought that was fascinating. That
is neat.
One explanation could be like down to some weird quantum physics level bias for left-handed spin particles.
Overlooking, of course, the obvious explanation of that's the right way. They go right because that's the right way to go.
Objectively correct.
That's the correct way to go.
The word right, the direction right. That can't be a quirk of language and history. Anyway, I also found other research I thought was interesting about, like drugs that are left-handed or right-handed, for example. D-ethambutol is used for treating tuberculosis, but the left-handed version of the same drug can cause blindness.
Oh! Okay, don't mess that up. Don't mess that one up.
Right. So, I'm imagining, this is my headcanon, based on the scenario put forward by Wren of like clone Trace comes into this world and he is mirrored down to the molecular level, and pretty quickly he finds that food doesn't taste good or like how he expects. And he's getting hungrier all the time, no matter what he eats, no matter how much sugar he dumps directly into his mouth. He still has this craving and he's cranky. And then he realizes that, oh my gosh, there's an exact double of me out there, and I hate the world, and I'm capable of going out and kind of ruining it in his name. Maybe he's my creator, and I'm going to seek my revenge on him, a la Frankenstein's monster, and sully his good name. And then the cops have no idea what's going on because, we have video of Trace, but the fingerprints don't match, and the PCR tests for the DNA just are not replicating the samples that we find at the crime scene. What is going on? And so ultimately, though, the last part of the question, right, to answer what Wren says, could he survive? Not for very long. Would he be evil? Trace, only you can answer that. In this scenario, do you think you would resort to a life of crime and villainy?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, I trust you because your eyebrows are not dramatically oversized.
Oh, wait.
So,
how about this?
You don't have the evil eyebrows. I think you're good.
Oh, no.
I don't think so.
That's exactly what evil Mirror Trace would say.
I think you need to come up with like a sort of password so that people know. You need to have like a sort of something already agreed upon password so that we know if it's you or if it's Mirror Trace.
we'd have to watch for you making a mistake and doing something left-handed.
Just look
right?
for my part.
Oh yeah,
just
the little swoop is going one way.
It's always gonna
but
be
what if
flipped.
we're using a video conferencing thing that has the ability to mirror the feed?
I can fool everyone in.
You could hide yourself
in video conferencing. I can fool everyone.
Yeah.
In real life, you'd be
I don't know.
Something's wrong. Don't know what it is.
But like I had heard of like chirality and organic chemistry, and I thought, it was interesting and like something to study for on the test. But then like really digging into it, it matters. It at the molecular level
matters.
Yeah.
Same exact chemicals arranged almost the same, just flipped, across the mirror plane, and you get something
completely different. So
different.
Interesting. So if I in my sliders version, like if it wasn't a clone, like you hit a button and cloned me, but if I'd come from another universe and brought food and stuff from that other universe, I could probably eat that food, but I couldn't eat any of the food here. If I looked it up, and if there's some fructose, L-fructose, that occurs naturally in like honey and a few different fruits, so maybe I could, maybe clone trace could survive if they found a really good source of honey. But even then, it wouldn't be enough. There wouldn't be the proteins. There wouldn't be the other things that I would need to make.
You wouldn't have like a nutritionally rounded diet.
Yeah, you'd really have to find very specific things.
The same guy who tried to create the artificial left-handed sugars eventually did find a right-handed sugar that was really close to another left-handed sugar. D-tagatose is what he called it. Is what it's called. And he tried to actually market it and sell it as like a low-calorie artificial sweetener that's, just as sweet as sugar and has the same like sweetness per, volume density as sugar, which is if you're trying to bake cookies or something and it calls for a certain amount of sugar, you just swap it out 1-to-1, right? That sort of thing. And yeah, it is also produced naturally, just not in very high quantities. And like you said, a lot of left-handed sugars, they are present because, the nature of chemistry and things down at the molecular level, it's not like all or nothing. There's frequently like a small percentage that just gets assembled the other way naturally. Yeah. It do be like that. Huh. So yeah, you could possibly find it, but not very much. It'd be tough to survive.
This all reminds me of hermit crabs, because hermit crabs, so rather than like other animals that live in shells, they don't make their own shell. They have to move into a shell that has been left behind by some sort of mollusk that does make its own shell, right? So a snail will make a shell. The snail is dead. They'll leave a shell behind. A hermit crab has to then move into that shell. But then as the hermit crab grows, it needs to progressively move into bigger and bigger shells. It has to molt, exit the shell, go find another bigger shell and move into that one. And the problem is that hermit crabs are not symmetrical. They spiral to the right. But so the hermit crabs they have to spiral into so that they can twist into the spiral shape of the snail's shell. A problem is that sometimes a hermit crab, it's very, very rare, but sometimes a hermit crab can be born twisted to the left instead of to the right. Luckily, also very, very rare, snails can sometimes twist to the left. It's also very rare. It's called a sinistral, I think, is a sinistral like snail is when they twist to the left instead of the right. So a left spiraling hermit crab needs to now find not just the right size and like a shell that's in a good enough shape that they can move in. They have to find a left-handed shell that they can move into.
Much more work.
It's very difficult. It's very rare, but it can happen sometimes.
It's tough being left-handed out there, I tell you.
But like because the snail shells,
the world's not made for you.
Yeah, like the whole world around you is just not made for the way that you were born. So all of this kind of like you think about, okay, even just flipping it, even if everything is exactly the same, but you're flipped to a mirror image, that doesn't mean you're going to be able to fit in, everywhere, and everything is going to be able to slot easily into everything around you. The whole world is made for a different arrangement.
Yeah, so interesting and so weird. Thanks, Wren, for sending in that question.
Yeah,
it's a great question.
It was so fun because at first glance, right, you're like, what difference would that make? And then you dig into it and you're like,
it makes all the difference.
Wow,
molecular level.
At a molecular level, that's massive. So cool.
Well, thanks, Wren, for sending in that question. This was a mega episode, you guys.
I know. It was quite long.
Ellen, thank you so much for joining us and for imagining what a mermaid might look like, because that was really fun.
And I was already doing it anyway, so I might as well do it on the podcast.
You're just laying in your bed thinking, what the heck are
thinking
these
about
things?
Creepy, gross mermaids.
Can you tell people a bit about the podcast and where they can find it? And then, your 2 podcasts? Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 children. One of them is Just the Zoo of Us. That's my golden child. That's my sweet little rule-following, well-behaved, family-friendly podcast. It's all about animals. It's where we review animals by rating them out of 10 in different categories. So half of the episodes are co-hosted where my husband and I do our own research and present our own animals. But we also have guest episodes where we bring on zoologists and all sorts of people that come on and talk about the animals that they study or work with. They're really, really fun. So we got a lot of cool insight. So that's Just the Zoo of Us. That one's family friendly and it's about animals. My goblin child, who
the evil mirror podcast.
My evil mirror podcast.
Mirror dimension podcast.
Yeah, my feral goblin child is called Spellbound and Gagged. That one is all about weird, creepy, gross, unsettling things, anything with bad vibes. We did one on the Uncanny Valley. We did one on cordyceps fungus and Pompeii and all the weird.
I think I know which one I'm going to listen to. That's awesome.
That one's called Spellbound and Gagged. That was not family friendly at all. We do cusses on that one, so don't listen.
You do the swears?
Okay.
We do the swears. Yeah, we do swears.
Yeah,
unbleeped.
Yeah.
Just raw dogging.
Wow, jeez.
Just a raw hot dog of a podcast.
Well, at least Mirror Trace could eat a raw hot dog, right? Because
I mean,
well, he doesn't have to fear much. He's not going to make it very long, so
he can eat it.
Whatever,
He can eat whatever he wants. It's whether he can digest it is the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, what is Mirror Trace's poops going to be like? That's what I'm thinking about.
Best not.
A bunch of undigested food.
That's exactly the way it went in. Completely
or do you
unaltered.
just have horrible bloating all the time?
Oh, yeah.
Do you get like a gut biome that's from the local environment? Like that is still unchanged. So when it gets there, it's just like big old party in the gut, and you're just basically like lactose intolerance, but for everything.
I'm everything intolerant.
Literally so intolerant.
Based on that information, he probably would be pretty evil then. If he's just an intolerant person.
I would burn the world down if I couldn't have ice cream. I'm just saying.
I mean, I'm not going to live very long, so it would be a much funner redemption story if Mirror Trace was like, jumped in front of a bus to save a little old lady or something. Be like, I was going to die anyway.
What are Mirror Trace's approaches to the trolley problem?
Yeah. Depends. Is Trace on the tracks or is it somebody else?
A trolley's on the tracks and Trace is on one track and Mirror Trace is on the other, and you have to pull the lever.
Oh, man. I don't know.
A third Mirror Trace. No, a horrible mermaid has to pull the lever.
That mermaid is not pulling that lever.
I present to you philosophy. Okay. Well, Ellen, thank you so much again for being here. And thank you all for listening to this episode of That's Absurd, Please Elaborate. The show was created, written, and produced by me, Julian Huguet.
And me, Trace Dominguez, and also Ellen Weatherford.
I had much less to do with it.
Yeah, but you did some of your writing for you.
Produced and edited by our wonderful and, as far as we know, not evil Kyle Sisk. Additional editing for this episode provided by Sam Grant. Welcome, Sam. Hi, thanks.
Special thanks to the listeners who submitted questions featured in this episode. That would be Riley and Wren. If you'd like to submit a question, look for the form down in the show notes. You can find a link to email us. You can go to our website or that'sabsurdshow.com. You can even call us at 302-TAPE-SHOW. Leave a voicemail and we will put that question into our question database. If you want to vote on our question database and what questions we are going to ask next to ourselves and our guests, join our Patreon, patreon.com/that'sabsurdshow. There are other perks as well if you want to join, but even the lowest level of tier will get to vote on upcoming questions. Please go join. Let us know what you think. If you want other perks,
you leave us
let
reviews,
us know that too.
We read them.
Just got into this, and we want your
feedback.
feedback.
So we would appreciate that. Finally, special thanks to those of you listening on Nebula. Nebula listeners get access to ad-free versions of episodes. They can support us and other independent creators. To join, visit go.nebula.tv/that'sabsurdshow. What do we always say at the end of every episode?
And remember,
put the bug in your mouth. Do it. Do it. Put the bug in your mouth. Do it.
in your mouth.
Put the bug in your mouth.
Put the bug in your mouth. Put the bug in your mouth.
The bug in your mouth.
Put the bug in your mouth. Darwin, Chucky.